Daniel Foster collapsed in the elevator at 11:47 p.m., his daughter's backpack still clutched in his trembling hands. For 3 weeks, the billionaire CEO had worked him like a machine, 18-hour days, midnight deadlines, weekends sacrificed. He'd brought 6-year-old Mia to the office so many times she knew every security guard by name. He'd chosen between sleep and survival, between being a father and keeping a roof over their heads. Tonight, his body made the choice for him. As the elevator doors opened to reveal Isabel Crown herself, Daniel's vision blurred. He heard Mia scream. Then everything went black. Before we dive into this story of power, redemption, and unexpected second chances, I invite you to stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Crown Capital hummed with the same relentless intensity they had for the past 19 days straight. Daniel Foster sat at his desk on the 42nd floor, his eyes burning as he stared at spreadsheets that had long since blurred into meaningless columns of numbers. His coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago. He couldn't remember if he'd eaten lunch or breakfast. Behind him, curled up on the small sofa he'd begged facilities to move into his office, Mia slept with her thumb in her mouth, a habit she'd outgrown 2 years ago but had recently returned to. Her blonde hair spilled across the cushion, and her frozen backpack lay on the floor beside her shoes. She was still wearing her school uniform. He'd picked her up at 3:30 p.m., brought her straight here, and she'd done her homework at the conference table while he worked. That was 17 hours ago. Daniel's phone buzzed. Another email from Isabel Crown. He didn't need to open it to know what it said. The subject line told him everything. Revised projections needed by midnight. It was 11:15 p.m. His hands shook as he reached for the mouse. Not from caffeine, he'd stopped feeling the effects of coffee days ago, but from something deeper. Exhaustion had burrowed into his bones, taken up residence in his nervous system. His body was starting to revolt in small, terrifying ways. Yesterday, he'd forgotten his own address for a full 30 seconds while filling out a form. This morning, he'd put orange juice in Mia's cereal bowl instead of milk, and hadn't noticed until she gently told him. "Daddy, the juice is for drinking, remember?" God, what was he doing to her? The Crown Capitol building stretched 72 floors into the Manhattan skyline, a monument to Isabel Crown's ambition and her late father's legacy. She'd inherited the company at 28, the youngest CEO of a major investment firm in New York history. That was 3 years ago. In that time, she'd doubled the company's value, destroyed 2 competitors, and earned a reputation as brilliant, ruthless, and utterly untouchable. She was also Daniel's boss, and for the past 3 weeks she'd been systematically destroying his life. It hadn't always been this bad. Daniel had joined Crown Capital 4 years ago, back when Richard Crown still ran the company with his daughter as COO. Back then, the culture had been demanding but humane. Richard had actually asked about Daniel's wife, Emma, and baby Mia. He'd sent flowers when Emma died of an aneurysm 2 years later, had given Daniel a month of bereavement leave, had personally assured him that the company would support him as a single father. Richard Crown had been a hard man, but a good one. Isabel was just hard. She'd taken over 18 months ago, and the transformation had been immediate. Late nights became the norm, weekends were no longer sacred. The unspoken rule became simple. If you wanted to succeed at Crown Capital, you sacrificed everything else. Your health, your relationships, your humanity. Daniel had tried to maintain boundaries. For Mia's sake, he'd pushed back on the most unreasonable demands, had left at 6 p.m. when he could, had protected his weekends like a fortress. For a while, it had worked. His performance reviews were stellar. His analyses had saved the company millions. He was good at his job, exceptional even, and that had bought him some flexibility. Then came the Thornfield merger. 6 weeks ago, Isabel had announced Crown Capital's plan to acquire Thornfield Industries, a manufacturing conglomerate worth $4.2 billion. It was the biggest deal in the company's history, the move that would cement Isabel's reputation as a force to be reckoned with. She'd assembled a core team of 12 analysts to handle the due diligence, valuation, and integration planning. Daniel was the senior analyst, which meant he carried the weight of the entire operation. "I need you to be perfect," Isabel had told him in their first meeting, her green eyes sharp as broken glass. Not good. Not great. Perfect. This deal defines my career, which means it defines yours. Understood? He'd understood. He'd nodded. He'd thrown himself into the work with the dedication that had always served him well. But Isabel's version of perfection was a moving target, a horizon that receded with every step he took toward it. Every analysis he completed came back with more demands. Every model he built needed another scenario, another sensitivity test, another impossible deadline. The board meets in 6 hours. I need the revised debt structure analysis. The Thornfield CEO wants new projections by morning. Don't leave until they're done. This isn't good enough, Daniel. Redo it. The first all-nighter had been hard but manageable. He'd called his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who sometimes watched Mia. She'd kept her overnight, given her breakfast, taken her to school. The second all-nighter, 3 days later, Mrs. Chen had been visiting her daughter in Boston. That's when Daniel had started bringing Mia to the office. At first, it had seemed almost adventurous to her. "We're having a sleepover at Daddy's work," she'd said, delighted. She'd explored the break rooms, charmed the night security staff, drawn pictures at the conference table. Daniel had set her up with her tablet, snacks, a blanket. He told himself it was temporary, just until the merger closed. But the merger kept expanding. New complications emerged daily. Thornfield's financials had irregularities. Their pension obligations were larger than disclosed. Their manufacturing facilities needed environmental remediation. Each discovery meant more work, longer hours, higher stakes. And Isabel's demands intensified. "I don't care about your personal life," she'd said 2 weeks ago, when Daniel had tentatively mentioned needing to leave for Mia's parent-teacher conference. "I care about results. If you can't deliver, I'll find someone who can." The threat had been clear. In this economy, with a 6-year-old daughter to support, Daniel couldn't afford to lose this job. The salary was extraordinary, $340,000 a year, plus bonuses. It paid for their small but safe apartment in a good school district, for Mia's after-school program, for the therapist she saw once a week to help her process her mother's death. He couldn't lose this job, which meant he couldn't say no to Isabel Crown. So he'd miss the parent-teacher conference, and Mia's ballet recital, and the class field trip to the Museum of Natural History that she'd been talking about for weeks, and pizza night with her best friend Sophie, and bedtime stories, and morning pancakes, and everything that made him a father instead of just a provider. Now, staring at his computer screen at 11:15 p.m. with his daughter asleep behind him, and Isabel's latest impossible demand glowing in his inbox, Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. He opened the email. "Daniel, the projections you sent are unacceptable. The sensitivity analysis is too narrow, and you've failed to account for currency fluctuation in the European subsidiaries. I need a complete revision with at least 15 scenario variations. Due by midnight. No excuses. This is your job. Do it." "I see. Midnight. 45 minutes away. 15 scenario variations would take at least 4 hours of focused work. Maybe 6, given how exhausted he was." Daniel's hands fell away from the keyboard. He stared at the screen, and for the first time in his professional career, he felt the urge to simply walk away, to wake up Mia, carry her to the car, drive home, and never come back. But he couldn't. The mortgage was due in 8 days. Mia's therapy session was on Friday, $200 out of pocket after insurance. The car needed new brakes. His mother in Arizona needed help with her medical bills. He couldn't walk away. So he did what he'd been doing for 3 weeks straight. He pushed everything down, the exhaustion, the rage, the despair, and he started working. His fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision. He pulled up the European subsidiary data, cross-referenced exchange rates, built new models. The numbers swam before his eyes, but muscle memory carried him through. He'd done this kind of analysis hundreds of times. His body knew the motions even when his brain started to fog. At 11:47 p.m., Daniel stood up to refill his coffee. His legs buckled slightly. He'd been sitting for 6 hours straight, but he caught himself on the desk. He glanced at Mia, still sleeping. Her chest rose and fell with the slow rhythm of childhood dreams. What did she dream about? Did she dream about having a father who showed up, who remembered her school events, who didn't drag her to an office at midnight? The thought was too painful. He pushed it away. He made it to the elevator. pressed the button for the lobby level where the executive kitchen was stocked with better coffee than the break room sludge. The doors opened. He stepped inside. That's when his vision started to tunnel. It began at the edges, a creeping darkness that felt almost gentle. Daniel blinked, thinking it was just fatigue. But the darkness kept spreading, closing in like a fist around his sight. His heart began to race, not the normal elevated rhythm of stress, but something erratic and terrifying. The elevator lurched downward. Or maybe that was him. Daniel grabbed for the handrail, but his fingers wouldn't close properly. His hand slid down the metal bar, useless. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to pulse and dim. His knees gave out. He thought of Mia, alone in his office, and tried to stay upright through sheer force of will. His body had other plans. Daniel Foster collapsed on the elevator floor. Mia's backpack, which he'd grabbed without thinking, some paternal instinct to keep her things close, clutched against his chest. His cheek pressed against the cold tile. His vision went black at the edges, then everywhere. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was the elevator ding, the doors sliding open, and a woman's sharp intake of breath. Then nothing. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Voices. Multiple voices, urgent and overlapping. Pulses thready. Call an ambulance. Sir, can you hear me? Where's his daughter? Someone said he has a daughter. Daniel's eyes fluttered open. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar, white tile instead of his office's acoustic panels. He was on the floor. People were crouched around him. A security guard. Someone from facilities. And Isabel Crown. She was kneeling beside him, her expression unreadable. Her dark hair was pulled back in its usual severe bun, her white blouse still crisp despite the late hour. But something in her eyes was different, uncertain. Daniel. Her voice was sharp, commanding. Can you hear me? He tried to speak, but his mouth was too dry. He managed a nod. Where's Mia? The question came from his own lips, raspy and desperate. The security team is getting her from your office right now, Isabel said. She's safe. Relief flooded through him, so intense it made his eyes sting. Mia was safe. That was all that mattered. The ambulance is 3 minutes out, someone said. I don't need an ambulance, Daniel croaked, trying to sit up. I need to finish the projections. Isabel's hand came down on his shoulder, firm and unyielding. Don't move. You collapsed, Daniel. You're going to the hospital. The midnight deadline. Fuck the deadline. The words hung in the air, shocking in their profanity and their source. Isabel Crown didn't swear. She was controlled, polished, perfect. But she'd just cursed, and her hand was still on Daniel's shoulder, and she was looking at him with something that might have been concern. Before Daniel could process this, he heard a sound that cut through everything else. Mia's voice, high and terrified. Daddy! She appeared in his field of vision, her face streaked with tears, her blonde hair wild from sleep. A security guard was trying to hold her back gently, but she wrenched free and threw herself down beside Daniel. Daddy, wake up! Please wake up! I'm awake, sweetheart, Daniel managed, his voice breaking. I'm okay. But Mia was sobbing now, her small hands clutching at his shirt. You fell down. They said you fell down and I woke up and you were gone. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. He tried to pull her close, but his arms were shaking too badly. Instead, Isabel reached out and gently guided Mia to sit beside Daniel, her hand on the child's back. The gesture was awkward, unpracticed, but oddly tender. Your daddy is going to be fine, Isabel said, her voice softer than Daniel had ever heard it. The doctors are going to check on him and make sure he's healthy. Can you be brave for a few more minutes? Mia looked up at Isabel with wide, tear-filled eyes. Are you Daddy's boss? Isabel hesitated. Yes. Did you make him sick? The question was innocent, guileless, devastating. Isabel's face went very still. Around them, the other employees suddenly found reasons to look away, to check their phones, to focus on anything other than this conversation. Mia, Daniel started, but Isabel held up a hand. She looked at the little girl with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. That's a good question, she said quietly. I don't know. Maybe I did. Before Mia could respond, the paramedics arrived. The next 20 minutes were a blur of vital signs, questions, a gurney being wheeled in. Daniel's blood pressure was dangerously high. His heart rhythm was irregular. The lead paramedic used words like acute exhaustion and possible cardiac event and needs immediate evaluation. They loaded him onto the gurney. Mia tried to climb up with him, and one of the paramedics gently explained that she'd have to ride in the front. That set off a fresh wave of tears. "I'll bring her," Isabel said abruptly. Everyone turned to stare at her. "I'll drive her to the hospital," Isabel continued, her tone brooking no argument. "She shouldn't be separated from her father, and she certainly shouldn't ride in an ambulance alone. I'll follow behind you." The paramedic looked uncertain. "Ma'am, are you family?" "I'm her father's employer, and right now I'm the only other adult here who can take responsibility for her, unless you'd prefer to call child services?" The threat was clear, and the paramedic backed down. "Fine. Follow us to Mount Sinai West. Stay close." Daniel wanted to protest. The idea of Isabel Crown, the woman who'd worked him into a hospital bed, being responsible for his daughter was absurd. But he couldn't speak. Exhaustion and stress had finally caught up to him completely, and as the paramedics wheeled him toward the elevator, his eyes were already closing. The last thing he saw was Isabel taking Mia's hand. The little girl looked up at her, still crying, and Isabel looked down with an expression of profound discomfort. "It's going to be okay," Isabel told her, the words stiff and uncertain. Then the elevator doors closed, and Daniel surrendered to the darkness. The emergency room at Mount Sinai West was organized chaos. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness as doctors examined him, asked questions, hooked him up to machines that beeped and hummed. They drew blood. They ran an EKG. They kept asking him about chest pain, shortness of breath, family history of heart disease. "When did you last eat a full meal?" the doctor asked. Daniel had to think about it. "Yesterday? Maybe the day before." "When did you last sleep for more than 4 hours?" That answer required even more thought. "I don't remember." The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and gray hair, gave him a long, searching look. "Mr. Foster, your body is shutting down. Your cortisol levels are through the roof. You're severely dehydrated, malnourished, and showing signs of acute stress syndrome. What's going on in your life?" "Work," Daniel said simply. "What kind of work requires this level of sacrifice?" He didn't have an answer for that. Or rather, he had too many answers, none of them good. They admitted him for overnight observation. As the nurses settled him into a private room, Daniel's thoughts turned immediately to Mia. Where was she? Was Isabel still with her? The idea seemed surreal. As if summoned by his thoughts, the door opened and Isabel stepped in. She looked different somehow, smaller. Her perfect posture had slumped slightly, and there were creases in her blouse. Her hair had come partially loose from its bun. She looked, for the first time since Daniel had known her, almost human. "Where's Mia?" he asked immediately. "Sleeping in the waiting room. One of the nurses found her a pillow and blanket. I've been with her the whole time." Daniel tried to imagine Isabel Crown sitting in a hospital waiting room, watching over a 6-year-old, and failed. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Isabel said quietly. "I did." She pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The machines beeped. Somewhere down the hall, someone was crying. "The doctor said you're going to be fine," Isabel finally said. "Physically, at least. They want to keep you overnight. Run some more tests in the morning, but there's no permanent damage. You got lucky." "Lucky," Daniel repeated. The word tasted bitter. "Daniel..." Isabel paused, seeming to struggle with words. Another first. "In your office, while we were waiting for the ambulance, I looked at your computer. I saw what you were working on." Daniel's stomach dropped. "The projections aren't finished." "I don't care about the projections." Isabel's voice was sharp, but not with anger, with something else. "I saw the timestamps on your files. You've been working 18, 20 hours a day for 3 weeks straight, 7 days a week, no breaks. You needed the work done." "I needed work done, yes, but not..." She stopped, shook her head. "I didn't know you were bringing your daughter to the office. I didn't know you were sleeping there. I didn't know any of this." "Would it have mattered if you did?" The question hung between them, brutal in its honesty. Isabel flinched as if he'd slapped her. I don't know, she admitted. A month ago? Maybe not. I was so focused on the Thornfield deal, on proving myself, that I couldn't see anything else. But tonight, watching you collapse, watching your daughter cry over your body, her voice went rough. That mattered. That broke through. Daniel studied her face. She looked younger than her 31 years right now and genuinely shaken. But he couldn't afford to trust this. Couldn't afford to believe that one moment of crisis had fundamentally changed Isabel Crown. What happens now? He asked. Now you rest. Tomorrow you go home. You don't come back to the office until you're medically cleared. And I mean actually cleared, not just you deciding you feel okay. While you're gone, I'm bringing in 2 additional analysts to handle your workload. The Thornfield deal. We'll proceed without you running yourself into the ground. Daniel, I'm not asking, I'm telling you. You're on mandatory medical leave, effective immediately. It should have felt like relief. Instead, Daniel felt a spike of panic. Am I being fired? What? No, God, no. Isabel looked genuinely horrified. You're one of the best analysts this company has ever had. I'm not firing you. I'm trying to keep you alive. She stood up, paced to the window, stared out at the Manhattan skyline. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. After you were taken away, I went back to your office. I pulled your files, your work history. Did you know you single-handedly caught a $14 million error in the Thornfield pension calculations? An error that would have blown up in our faces after acquisition? Daniel hadn't known she'd seen that. It was just doing my job. You saved this deal, possibly saved the entire company from a catastrophic mistake, and I didn't even know about it because you buried it in a footnote of a report I barely skimmed. She turned to face him. You've been carrying this company, carrying me, for weeks, and what did you get in return? Impossible deadlines. Midnight emails. No recognition. No support. That's corporate culture, Daniel said, trying to keep the bitterness out of his voice. That's just how it works. That's how I made it work. Isabel's jaw tightened. My father built this company on hard work and high standards. When he died, everyone was waiting for me to fail. The board, the competitors, the media. They all expected the girl CEO to crash and burn within a year. So I pushed harder than he ever did. I demanded more. I accepted no excuses, no weakness. I thought that's what leadership meant. And now? Now I'm realizing that there's a difference between high standards and cruelty, between pushing people to excellence and pushing them into hospital beds. She returned to the chair, sat down heavily. I saw your daughter's face tonight, Daniel. The terror, the confusion. She's 6 years old, and she asked me if I made her father sick. What kind of leader am I if that's the truth? Daniel didn't have an answer. He was too tired, too overwhelmed, but something in Isabel's face, the genuine shame, the dawning horror of self-awareness, made him believe she was serious. I need to check on Mia, he said instead. Of course. Isabel stood. I'll bring her in. She left, and Daniel lay back against the pillows, his mind reeling. In the past 3 hours, his entire world had tilted on its axis. He'd collapsed, been hospitalized, seen his boss, his ruthless, unfeeling boss, kneel beside him on an elevator floor, heard her swear, watched her take responsibility for his daughter. The door opened again, and Mia rushed in. She climbed onto the bed with the practiced ease of a child who'd spent too much time in hospitals after her mother's death. She curled against Daniel's side, her small body shaking with leftover fear. I'm okay, baby, Daniel whispered, wrapping his arms around her. I promise. I'm okay. You scared me, Daddy. I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Isabel stood in the doorway, watching them. When Mia finally pulled back and looked at her, the little girl's expression was curious rather than afraid. Thank you for driving me here, Mia said politely. Emma had raised her with good manners, and even in crisis they held. You're welcome, Isabel replied. She looked uncomfortable again, out of her depth. Mia, I need to tell you something. The reason your dad got sick is because I asked him to work too hard. That was wrong of me. I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Mia considered this with the seriousness children brought to important matters. Are you going to be nicer to him? Yes, Isabel said. I'm going to try to be much nicer. Good, because he's the best daddy in the world, and he deserves nice people. Daniel's chest tightened. Isabel's expression softened into something almost like a smile. You're absolutely right, Isabel said. He does. She left them then, murmuring something about calling a car service to take Mia home, making arrangements with a neighbor. Daniel held his daughter and tried to process what had just happened. Isabel Crown had apologized, had admitted fault, had promised change. Whether she meant it, whether one night of crisis could truly transform a person, Daniel didn't know. But lying in that hospital bed with his daughter's weight against his chest and machines monitoring his failing body, he allowed himself the smallest flicker of hope. Maybe things could be different. Maybe he could have both, his job and his life, his career and his daughter. Maybe. The night stretched on. A nurse came in to check his vitals. Mia fell asleep curled against him, her breathing slow and even. And Daniel stared at the ceiling, exhausted beyond measure, but too wired to sleep. Somewhere in the building, Isabel Crown sat in a waiting room and stared at her phone, at the emails she'd sent over the past 3 weeks, at the evidence of her own ruthlessness laid bare in timestamps and demands. And something in her, something that had been hardening since her father's death, since taking over the company, since deciding that strength meant never bending, began, finally, to crack. The morning light filtered through the hospital blinds in pale strips across Daniel's face. He woke to find Mia still curled against him, her thumb in her mouth again, and a nurse checking his IV line with practiced efficiency. "Good morning, Mr. Foster," the nurse said softly, careful not to wake the child. "How are you feeling?" Daniel took inventory of his body. Exhausted, yes, but the trembling had stopped. His heartbeat felt steadier. The fog in his mind had lifted slightly, though weariness still clung to him like a second skin. "Better," he said, and meant it. "The doctor will be in around 8 to review your test results. Your vitals stabilized overnight, which is good news." She adjusted something on the monitor. "Also, there's a woman in the waiting room who's been here since you were admitted. Says she's your employer? She asked me to let her know when you woke up." Daniel's stomach tightened. Tell her I'll see her in a few minutes, after Mia wakes up." The nurse nodded and left. Daniel lay still, watching his daughter sleep, trying to prepare himself for whatever came next. In the harsh light of morning, last night's conversation with Isabel felt surreal, dreamlike. Had she really apologized? Had she really seemed genuine in her concern? Or had it just been the shock of the moment, the embarrassment of having an employee collapse in front of her staff? Would today bring the real Isabel back? The one who sent midnight emails and accepted no excuses? Mia stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she looked confused. Then memory returned and fear flashed across her face. "Daddy?" "I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm okay." She sat up, studying his face with an intensity that broke his heart. When had his 6-year-old learned to look at him with such worry? When had she started checking to make sure he was still breathing? "Can we go home?" she asked. "Soon. The doctor needs to check on me first, but then, yes, we'll go home." "And you won't go to work?" The question was careful, hopeful, cautious. Daniel pulled her close. "Not for a while. I'm going to stay home with you for a few days. We'll have breakfast together, and I'll take you to school, and maybe we can go to the park after. Would you like that?" Mia's face lit up with such pure joy that Daniel felt physically ill. When had the simple promise of his presence become something extraordinary? When had he let his job steal so much of himself that his daughter was shocked by the prospect of a normal day together? "Really? You promise?" "I promise." A knock at the door interrupted them. Isabel stepped in, and Daniel was struck again by how different she looked. She changed clothes. Someone must have brought her fresh things, or she'd gone home briefly. And her hair was down, falling in dark waves around her shoulders. Without the severe bun and corporate armor, she looked younger, almost vulnerable. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. "I wanted to check on you before I headed to the office." "You stayed all night?" Daniel asked. "I did. I wanted to make sure—" She trailed off, glanced at Mia, then back to Daniel. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Mia watched Isabel with open curiosity. Are you going to make my daddy work today? No, Isabel said firmly. Your daddy is going to rest, and when he's ready to come back, things are going to be different. I promise. The word promise seemed to carry weight when Isabel said it. She looked at Daniel as she spoke, her green eyes serious. I've already sent an email to the team. You're on medical leave, no arguments. Marcus and Jennifer are taking over your portions of the Thornfield analysis. I've also scheduled a meeting with HR this afternoon to discuss restructuring our workload expectations across the department. Daniel blinked. Marcus and Jennifer were junior analysts, talented but inexperienced. They're not ready for... Then they'll learn. And if they can't handle it, I'll bring in external consultants. Daniel, you need to understand something. This company will survive without you working yourself to death. It has to, because I won't accept the alternative anymore. She paused. I won't accept who I became to make that alternative necessary. The words hung in the air between them. Mia looked between the two adults, not understanding the full context, but sensing the importance of the moment. There's something else, Isabel continued. Last night, after you were stabilized, I went back to the office. I spent hours going through your work from the past month, not just the Thornfield files, but everything. Daniel's chest tightened. And I found 3 major errors in reports I had approved, errors you'd caught and corrected without telling me. I found notes in margins where you'd saved me from making catastrophic recommendations to clients. I found a pattern of you quietly fixing problems, protecting the company's reputation, doing work far beyond your job description, all while I was sending you more demands. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. There was one file in particular, a memo you'd started writing 2 weeks ago but never sent. It was addressed to me, outlining concerns about the Thornfield deal's timeline and the strain it was putting on the team. You wrote, "The current pace is unsustainable. People have families, lives, physical limits. We're going to lose good employees, or worse, we're going to break them." Isabel's voice went soft. You wrote that 2 weeks ago, Daniel. You saw this coming, and I didn't listen because you never sent it. Why didn't you send it? Daniel glanced at Mia, who was listening with wide eyes. Can we talk about this later? Of course. Isabel stood. I've arranged for a car service to take you and Mia home whenever the doctor clears you, and I've contacted Mrs. Chen, your neighbor. She's agreed to stay with Mia for a few days while you recover. The company is covering her fee. You don't need to... Yes, I do. Daniel, please, let me do this. Let me start fixing what I broke. There was such raw earnestness in her voice that Daniel couldn't argue. He nodded slowly, and something like relief crossed Isabel's face. She looked at Mia. Take good care of your dad, okay? Make sure he rests. I will, Mia said solemnly. I'm good at taking care of people. I took care of Mommy before she went to heaven. The innocence of the statement, the casual mention of loss, made Isabel's expression crack. She blinked rapidly, nodded, and left without another word. When she was gone, Mia looked up at Daniel. Daddy, is your boss sad? I think she might be, sweetheart. Why? How did you explain to a 6-year-old the complex weight of guilt, of self-recognition, of realizing you'd caused harm? Daniel settled for simplicity. Because she made a mistake, and now she knows it. And knowing you hurt someone can make you very sad. Mia considered this with the gravity children brought to moral questions. But she said sorry. That's what you're supposed to do when you make a mistake. You're right. That is what you're supposed to do. And then the person forgives you, and you try to be better. Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel thought. His daughter, who'd lost her mother, who'd been dragged to offices at midnight, who'd watched her father collapse from exhaustion, still believed in forgiveness and second chances. Maybe he could try to believe too. The doctor arrived an hour later, a different physician than the night before, a younger man with a tablet and a concerned expression. He reviewed Daniel's charts, asked more questions, and finally delivered his verdict. Physically, you're stable. No permanent heart damage, which is fortunate. But Mr. Foster, what happened to you last night was a warning. Your body was shutting down from chronic stress and exhaustion. If you'd continued at that pace for another week, we'd be having a very different conversation. I understand. Do you? Because I've seen this before. High-achieving professionals who think they're invincible until their bodies prove otherwise. You have a daughter who needs you. You can't provide for her if you're dead. The bluntness was jarring but effective. Daniel nodded. I hear you. Good. I'm clearing you to go home, but you're on mandatory rest for at least a week. No work. No screens if you can help it. No stress. Sleep. Eat proper meals. Spend time with your daughter. I'm also referring you to a cardiologist for follow-up, and I strongly recommend you speak with a therapist about stress management. Another expense. But Daniel nodded anyway. Thank you, doctor. By 10 a.m., Daniel and Mia were in the back of a town car, heading toward their apartment in Queens. Mia chattered happily about all the things they could do together. The park, the library, making cookies, watching her favorite movies. Daniel listened and tried to remember when he'd last done any of those things with her. Too long. Far too long. Mrs. Chen was waiting at their apartment, her kind face creased with worry. She'd already stocked their fridge with groceries and made a pot of soup. As she fussed over Daniel, checking his color, insisting he sit down immediately, he felt tears prick his eyes. When had he become so isolated that a neighbor's kindness felt overwhelming? You rest, Mrs. Chen ordered. I watch Mia. You sleep. Daniel wanted to protest, to say he could manage, but exhaustion pulled at him like an undertow. He made it to his bedroom, collapsed onto the bed still fully clothed, and was asleep within minutes. He woke to darkness and panic. The clock read 6:47 p.m. He'd slept for 8 hours straight. 8 hours. When was the last time he'd done that? He stumbled out of the bedroom to find Mia and Mrs. Chen at the kitchen table coloring. Mia looked up and beamed. Daddy, you're awake. Mrs. Chen made dinner. Are you hungry? He was, he realized, ravenously so. They ate together, simple chicken and rice, but it tasted like heaven. Mia talked about her day, about the pictures she'd drawn, about the story Mrs. Chen had read her. Normal things, beautiful, mundane, precious things. After dinner, after Mia's bath, after he'd tucked her into bed with 3 stories instead of the usual rushed one, Daniel sat in his living room and stared at his laptop. He should check his email, see how the Thornfield deal was progressing, make sure Marcus and Jennifer weren't drowning. But the doctor's words echoed in his mind. No work, no screens if you can help it, no stress. And beneath that, Isabel's promise. Things are going to be different. Could he trust that? Could he actually step back and let others handle what he'd been carrying alone? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It's Isabel. I got your number from HR. I hope that's okay. I wanted to check in. How are you feeling? Daniel stared at the message. Isabel Crown had never texted him before, had never checked in on him personally. He typed slowly. Better. Slept most of the day. Thank you for arranging everything. The response came quickly. Of course. I also wanted you to know I met with HR and the executive team this afternoon. We're implementing new policies, mandatory time tracking, caps on weekly hours, required days off. It's going to be company-wide. Daniel read the message twice, then typed, That's significant. It's necessary. I should have done it years ago. Daniel, I spent today really looking at how this company operates. The turnover rate, the burnout complaints that were filed and ignored, the exit interviews citing work-life balance. I've been so focused on results that I stopped seeing people. Another message followed. I'm sorry, I know I said that last night, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for what I did to you, for what I didn't see. Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He thought about his daughter's words. She said sorry. That's what you're supposed to do when you make a mistake. He typed, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the changes you're making. A pause, then, I'm going to work on being a better leader, a better person. I hope you'll give me the chance to prove it. I will, Daniel wrote back, and meant it. Over the next week, Daniel did something radical. He rested. He slept 10 hours a night. He cooked breakfast for Mia every morning, pancakes shaped like animals, eggs with toast, oatmeal with fruit. He walked her to school, picked her up, took her to the park. They visited the library. They made cookies that turned out lopsided but delicious. They watched movies curled up on the couch. He didn't check his work email, didn't log into the company server, didn't think about Thornfield or mergers or projections. And slowly, day by day, he felt himself coming back. The tremor in his hands stopped, his heart rate normalized. The constant knot of anxiety in his chest began to unwind. He started to remember what it felt like to simply be Daniel, not just an analyst, not just an employee, but a person, a father. On Thursday afternoon, sitting in the park watching Mia on the swings, his phone rang. Isabel. He answered cautiously. Hello? Daniel, hi. I'm sorry to bother you during your leave. I promised myself I wouldn't, but something happened and I thought you should know. His stomach tightened. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Actually, something's very right. We closed the Thornfield deal this morning. The board approved it unanimously. It's done. Relief and something else, pride maybe, flooded through him. That's great. Congratulations. It wouldn't have happened without your work. The board specifically cited the pension analysis and the currency projections as key factors in their decision. I made sure they knew it was your analysis, Daniel. I gave you credit. He didn't know what to say. In 3 years at Crown Capital, Isabel had never given him public credit for anything. Thank you, he managed. There's more. I'm restructuring your position. When you come back, and only when you're medically cleared and ready, you'll be Senior Director of Strategic Analysis. New title, significant raise, and a team of 3 analysts reporting to you. You'll set the hours and expectations for your team. I'm trusting you to build the kind of culture I should have built from the start. Daniel's mind reeled. Isabel, I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. No pressure, no rush. Take your time. And Daniel? Her voice softened. How's Mia? The question surprised him. She's good, happy. We're having a good week. I'm glad. She deserves to have her father healthy and present. You both do. After they hung up, Daniel sat on the park bench and watched his daughter swing higher and higher, her laughter carrying on the wind. A promotion, a team, the chance to shape how people worked, to protect others from what he'd endured. It felt like possibility, like redemption, like maybe Isabel Crown meant what she'd said about changing. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Daniel finally opened his laptop. Not to work, he wasn't ready for that yet, but to look at something he'd avoided for 2 years, Emma's photos. He had hundreds of them, stored in folders he couldn't bear to open. Pictures of her pregnant, of her holding newborn Mia, of the 3 of them as a family. He looked through them now, tears streaming down his face, and let himself remember. Not just the loss, but the love. The way Emma had made him laugh. The way she'd believed in him. The way she'd always said, "You're a good man, Daniel Foster. Don't forget that." He'd forgotten. Somewhere in the grind of single parenthood and corporate pressure, he'd forgotten who he was outside of his survival mode. But maybe he could remember. Maybe he could rebuild. His phone buzzed, another text from Isabel. I'm sorry, one more thing, and then I'll leave you alone. I wanted you to know that I spoke with the entire department today. I told them what happened to you, and I took responsibility for creating the conditions that led to it. I promised them things would change, and I meant it. Some of them were angry, some were skeptical, but I think maybe I started to earn back a little trust today. Daniel read the message twice, then typed, That took courage. Thank you for telling me. It was the least I could do. Rest well, Daniel. You've earned it. He set the phone down and closed the laptop. Tomorrow, he'd take Mia to her rescheduled parent-teacher conference. This weekend, they'd visit his mother in Arizona, a trip he'd been putting off for months. Next week, maybe, he'd start thinking about going back to work. But tonight, he'd simply sit in the quiet apartment and breathe and be grateful for second chances. In her penthouse overlooking Central Park, Isabel sat at her desk and looked at the framed photo of her father that she kept there. Richard Crown smiled out at her, confident and proud. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered to the empty room. I thought I was honoring your legacy by being stronger than you, but I was just being cruel. I see that now. The photo didn't answer, but in the silence, Isabel felt something shift. She'd spent 3 years trying to prove she was worthy of her father's company, worthy of the crown name. She'd pushed herself and everyone around her to impossible standards, and she'd nearly destroyed a good man in the process. Nearly destroyed herself too, she was realizing, because what kind of person had she become? What kind of leader measured success only in deals closed and profits earned, never in lives improved or people supported? Not the kind of leader she wanted to be. Not anymore. She opened her laptop and began to type. Not an email to the board or a memo to staff, but something more personal. A list of changes she needed to make. In the company, yes, but also in herself. Listen more. Assume less. Ask about people's lives. Remember that everyone on her staff was someone's parent, someone's child, someone's friend. That they had birthdays and fears and dreams beyond quarterly projections. That they were human, fallible, vulnerable, precious. As she wrote, Isabel thought about Daniel's daughter, Mia, and the question she'd asked, "Did you make him sick?" Yes, Isabel had made him sick. She'd taken a brilliant, dedicated employee and pushed him until he broke. But she'd also seen his resilience, his love for his daughter, his quiet strength in correcting her errors without seeking credit, in protecting the company even while it was destroying him. Daniel Foster was a better person than she'd ever been. And if she could learn even a fraction of his integrity, his compassion, his ability to keep going despite impossible odds, maybe she could become the leader she'd always claimed to be. It wouldn't be easy. Changing a company culture took time, effort, pushback from those who thrived in the old system. Changing herself would be harder still. But watching Daniel collapse, watching his daughter's terror, watching the cost of her ambition made flesh and blood and tears, that had broken something open in Isabel, had forced her to see past her own reflection to the damage she was causing. She couldn't undo the past, couldn't give Daniel back the time he'd lost with Mia, the health he'd sacrificed, the peace he'd surrendered, but she could make sure it never happened again, to him or anyone else. Isabel saved her list and closed the laptop. Tomorrow she'd continue the work of transformation. Tonight she'd sit with the weight of what she'd done and let it change her. Outside her window, the city glittered with a million lights, each one representing a life, a story, a person striving and struggling and hoping. For the first time in years, Isabel looked at that vast constellation of humanity and felt connected to it, felt responsible for it in a way that went beyond profit margins and corporate success, felt finally the weight of what it meant to hold power over other people's lives. It was humbling, terrifying, and absolutely necessary. In Queens, Daniel checked on his sleeping daughter one more time, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "I'm here, baby. I'm not going anywhere." In Manhattan, Isabel turned off her lights and made herself a promise. She would be worthy of the trust her employees gave her, worthy of the power she wielded, worthy of the second chance she'd been given. And somewhere in the space between those two promises, one father's devotion and one leader's awakening, the possibility of real change began to take root. Daniel returned to Crown Capital 3 weeks after his collapse, walking through the glass doors on a Monday morning with Mia's hand-drawn good luck card tucked in his jacket pocket. The building felt different somehow, or maybe he was the one who'd changed. The lobby that had once felt like a cathedral to ambition now seemed just like a lobby, marble and steel and people rushing to elevators. He'd been medically cleared by his cardiologist on Friday. His blood pressure was normal, his heart rhythm steady, his stress markers improved. The doctor had still cautioned him about returning to the environment that had nearly killed him, but Daniel had assured him things would be different now. He hoped that was true. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt longer than usual. Daniel watched the numbers climb and remembered the last time he'd been in this elevator, collapsing, everything going dark. His hands were steady now, but the memory made his chest tight. The doors opened to a sight that stopped him in his tracks. His entire team was gathered in the reception area, Marcus, Jennifer, and 3 new faces he didn't recognize. Someone had hung a banner that read, "Welcome back, Daniel," in slightly crooked letters. Marcus stepped forward, grinning. "Boss, good to see you vertical." "Good to be vertical," Daniel managed, surprised by the emotion in his throat. Jennifer hugged him quickly, fiercely. "We were so scared. Don't ever do that again." "I'll try not to." They ushered him to the conference room where breakfast had been laid out. Bagels, fruit, coffee, orange juice. As Daniel sat down, Marcus cleared his throat. So, things have been pretty different around here while you were gone. Isabel, Ms. Crown, she's been... He glanced at the others. Human, Jennifer supplied. She's been human. It's weird. One of the new analysts, a young woman with bright red hair, nodded enthusiastically. I've worked at 3 firms before this, and I've never seen a CEO personally approve every employee's vacation request to make sure people were actually taking time off. She spent 2 hours in our team meeting last week just listening to concerns. Daniel absorbed this, cautiously hopeful. And the Thornfield integration? Ahead of schedule and under budget, Marcus said. Turns out when you staff appropriately and don't work people into the ground, they're actually more productive. Who knew? The sarcasm was gentle, but the point landed. They spent the next hour catching Daniel up on everything he'd missed. The successful merger completion, the new client acquisitions, the restructured workflow systems. Every change seemed designed to prevent what had happened to Daniel from happening to anyone else. Finally, Marcus glanced at his watch. You've got a meeting with Isabel at 10. She wanted to see you first thing, but we intercepted you for breakfast. Hope that's okay. More than okay, Daniel said. Thank you, all of you. As the team dispersed back to their desks, Daniel made his way to Isabel's office on the 71st floor. Her assistant, an efficient woman named Patricia, who'd always seemed vaguely terrifying, actually smiled at him. Mr. Foster, it's wonderful to have you back. Ms. Crown is expecting you. Go right in. Daniel knocked and entered. Isabel's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and furniture that probably cost more than Daniel's annual salary. But Isabel herself looked different. She was standing by the window rather than sitting behind her massive desk, and she was wearing gray slacks and a simple sweater instead of her usual severe suits. Daniel! She turned, and her face lit up with genuine pleasure. Welcome back. How are you feeling? Good. Really good, actually. The rest helped. I'm glad. Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? They settled into the chairs by the window rather than the formal desk setup, another small signal that something had shifted. Isabel looked at him carefully, as if checking for signs of fragility. I want you to know that there's absolutely no pressure for you to jump back into your full responsibilities immediately, she said. We discussed this in the leadership meeting. You can ease back in at whatever pace feels right. I appreciate that, but I'm ready to work. I've been resting for 3 weeks. I'm going stir-crazy. Isabel smiled slightly. I understand, but Daniel, I need you to promise me something. If you ever feel overwhelmed, if the workload becomes too much, if you need time off, you tell me immediately. No suffering in silence, no pushing through until you break. Can you promise me that? The earnestness in her voice, the genuine concern in her eyes, made something in Daniel's chest loosen. I promise. But I need you to promise something too. Anything. If you see yourself slipping back into old patterns, the midnight emails, the impossible deadlines, the treating people like machines, you catch yourself. You remember what happened. Can you promise me that? Isabel's expression went serious. I promise. Actually, I've been seeing a therapist twice a week since you collapsed. She's helping me understand some of the patterns I developed after my father died. The need for control, the equating of rest with weakness, it's been illuminating. Daniel hadn't expected that level of vulnerability. That takes courage. So does coming back here after what I put you through. Daniel, I want to show you something. She pulled out her phone and opened a document. This is the new company policy manual. It went into effect last week. Maximum 50-hour work weeks except in genuine emergencies, and those require executive approval. Mandatory vacation time. Use it or lose it. No emails after 7 p.m. or on weekends unless critical. Mental health days are granted without question. We're hiring 20% more staff across all departments to ensure coverage. She scrolled through page after page of reforms. I brought in a consultant who specializes in sustainable high-performance cultures. She's been brutal in her assessment of how we operated before, but she's also been invaluable in helping us build something better. Daniel read through the policies, his eyebrows rising higher with each section. This is comprehensive. It has to be. I can't trust myself to just be better without systems in place. I needed to change the structure, not just my intentions. Isabel set the phone down. Your new team starts today. 3 analysts reporting to you, all experienced, all fully briefed. Your job is to direct strategy and mentor them, not to do everything yourself. That's non-negotiable. I saw them at breakfast. They seem great. They are. And Daniel? Your salary has been adjusted to reflect your new role. It's in the offer letter Patricia will give you, along with equity options and a signing bonus that I hope begins to compensate for what I put you through. She handed him an envelope. Daniel opened it, saw the numbers, and nearly dropped the paper. The salary was almost double what he'd been making. The signing bonus alone was more than he'd earned in his first 2 years at the company. Isabel, this is fair. It's fair, Daniel. You saved this company multiple times over. You deserve to be compensated accordingly. More than that, you deserve to be valued. Daniel's throat felt tight. He remembered the version of Isabel who'd sent him midnight demands, who told him she didn't care about his personal life. This woman sitting across from him, talking about therapy and fair compensation and value, she felt like a different person entirely. Thank you, he managed, for all of this, for changing. Thank you for surviving, for coming back, for giving me the chance to prove I can do better. Isabel stood. Come on, I want to show you your new office. They took the elevator down 2 floors. Isabel led him to a corner office with windows on 2 sides and twice the space of his previous workspace. Inside, his desk had been set up with 3 monitors, a new ergonomic chair, and a small sofa identical to the one he'd brought in for Mia. I thought you might want somewhere comfortable for Mia if you ever need to bring her again, Isabel said quietly. Though I'm hoping our new policies mean that won't be necessary. Daniel walked to the windows, looking out over the city. He could see his daughter's school from here, just a small building in the distance. The thought that he could glance up from work and know she was there, safe, learning, living her life without needing to sleep in hallway chairs, it made his eyes sting. It's perfect, he said. They spent the next hour reviewing his new responsibilities, the team structure, the current projects. Isabel had clearly thought through every detail, every potential stressor. She'd built in redundancies, support systems, escape valves for pressure. It was the work of someone who'd studied her own failure and was determined never to repeat it. As they wrapped up, Isabel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. I'm sorry, I need to take this. Board member. But Daniel? I'm really glad you're back. Me too. Daniel spent the rest of the morning settling into his new office and meeting with his team. They were sharp, engaged, and clearly relieved to have proper leadership. By lunch, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced at work in months: contentment. He was doing what he was good at, with adequate support, in an environment that no longer felt actively hostile to his well-being. He was eating a sandwich at his desk, at a reasonable lunch hour, not at midnight, when his phone rang. Mia's school. His heart seized. Mr. Foster? This is Principal Morrison. Everything's fine, but we need you to come pick up Mia. She's in the nurse's office with a stomachache. Daniel was out the door before the principal finished speaking. He texted his team that he had a family emergency and drove to the school, his mind racing through possibilities. Was she really sick? Was this trauma from the weeks he'd been absent manifesting physically? Had he damaged her more than he'd realized? He found Mia in the nurse's office, curled up on a cot, looking small and miserable. When she saw him, her face crumpled. Daddy? He scooped her up, felt her forehead. No fever? What hurts, baby? My tummy, and I miss you. I know you're at work, but I just really missed you. The nurse, a kind woman in her 50s, gave Daniel a knowing look. She's not sick, Mr. Foster. She's anxious. It happens sometimes after a parent has a medical event. The child becomes hypervigilant about separation. Daniel's heart broke and mended simultaneously. His daughter wasn't sick, but she was scared of losing him. Of course she was. She'd already lost her mother. Then she'd watched her father collapse. Can I take her home? He asked. I think that would be best today. But Mr. Foster, you might want to consider talking to a child psychologist, just to help her process everything. Daniel nodded, already making a mental note to call Mia's therapist for an emergency session. He carried his daughter to the car, buckled her in, and drove home while she held his hand over the center console. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I know you need to work." "Mia, look at me." Daniel pulled over, turned to face her. "You are more important than any job. Always. If you need me, I come. No questions, no hesitation. Do you understand?" "But your boss, my boss knows that you come first. She understands. And if she didn't, I'd quit. You are my priority, sweetheart. Always." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared when you fell down. I thought you were going to heaven like Mommy." Daniel unbuckled his seatbelt and climbed into the back seat, pulling his daughter into his arms. He let her cry, let himself cry too, both of them releasing weeks of accumulated fear and trauma. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered into her hair. "I'm healthy now. I'm resting. I'm taking care of myself. I'm going to be here for you for a very, very long time." They sat in the parked car for 20 minutes, holding each other. Finally, Mia pulled back and wiped her eyes. "Can we go home and make grilled cheese?" "We can make anything you want." At home, they cooked together, real cooking, not rushed meals between work sessions. They made grilled cheese with tomato soup, Mia's favorite. They ate at the table instead of in front of the TV. They talked about her day, her friends, her upcoming school project on butterflies. Normal things. Beautiful, ordinary, precious things. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Isabel. "Patricia told me you left for a family emergency. Is everything okay?" He typed back. "Mia needed me. We're fine now." "Good. Take the rest of the day. Take tomorrow if you need it. Family comes first." Daniel stared at the message, marveling again at the transformation. 3 months ago, leaving work for a sick child would have been met with thinly veiled disapproval. Now, it was encouraged. "Thank you," he texted back. "I'll be in tomorrow." That evening, after Mia was asleep, Daniel sat at his kitchen table with a glass of wine and his laptop. He opened his personal email and found a message from his mother in Arizona. "Daniel, I've been thinking about you and Mia. I know things have been hard. If you ever need help, if you ever want to come stay for a while, we have room. Love, Mom." The offer touched him, but Daniel realized he didn't need to escape anymore. He had a job that valued him, a boss who'd learned from her mistakes, a daughter who was healing, and a future that no longer felt like a weight dragging him under. He was okay. They were okay. He wrote back, "Thanks, Mom. We're doing much better. I'll bring Mia to visit soon. Love you." As he closed the laptop, his phone rang. Isabel. At 8 p.m. Daniel felt a flicker of old anxiety before answering. "I'm sorry to call so late," Isabel said immediately. "I know it violates the new policies, but something happened, and I thought you should hear it from me." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, something's very right. Do you remember the Bergman account? The one we lost last year because they said our culture was toxic?" "I remember. They called today. They want to come back. They said they've been watching the changes we've made, the new policies, the press coverage about our cultural transformation. They're impressed. They want to meet next week about not just reinstating their account, but expanding it." Daniel sat up straighter. The Bergman account was worth $40 million annually. "That's incredible." "It's vindication," Isabel said, her voice thick with emotion. "Proof that doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, it's good business." "Daniel, I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For being the catalyst. For breaking down so completely that I had to see what I'd become. I know that sounds terrible, thanking you for suffering, but your collapse saved this company in ways that have nothing to do with balance sheets. It saved our soul." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. The idea that his worst moment had become Isabel's turning point felt strange, complicated, oddly fitting. "I'm glad something good came from it," he finally said. "More than good. Daniel, I'm building the company my father would have been proud of. Not the one I thought he'd want, the aggressive, ruthless, winning at all costs version, but the one he actually built before I took over and perverted it. A place where excellence and humanity can coexist." They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Daniel sat in his quiet kitchen and thought about transformation, about how sometimes breaking down was the only way to break through to something better. The next morning, Daniel woke to Mia crawling into bed with him, her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. "Can you take me to school today?" she asked. Of course. They had breakfast together, scrambled eggs and toast, orange juice in the correct glasses. Daniel braided Mia's hair, something Emma used to do that he'd learned through trial and error over the past 2 years. They drove to school listening to her favorite songs, and when he walked her to her classroom, Mia hugged him tight. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, baby. Have a great day." "Will you pick me up?" "Absolutely. I'll be right here at 3. The promise was simple, ordinary, but Mia's smile suggested it meant everything. Daniel drove to Crown Capital feeling lighter than he had in months. He spent the morning in productive meetings, reviewing strategic analyses, mentoring his new team. At noon, he actually took a lunch break, went to a nearby cafe, ate outside, read a few chapters of a novel he'd been meaning to finish for 6 months. When he returned to his office, there was a package on his desk. No shipping label, no return address. Daniel opened it carefully and found a children's book inside. The Rabbit Who Wanted the Moon. A note was tucked in the front cover, written in elegant script. For Mia, my therapist recommended this for children processing anxiety about parent health. I hope it helps. Isabel. Daniel opened the book and read the first few pages. It was about a young rabbit whose parent got sick, and the rabbit's journey through fear toward understanding and healing. The illustrations were beautiful, the story gentle but honest. He texted Isabel, "Thank you for the book. This is incredibly thoughtful." "I wanted to help," she wrote back. "If there's anything else Mia needs, please tell me." At 3 p.m., Daniel left the office. On time, without guilt, without a pile of work calling him back. He picked up Mia from school, took her to the park, pushed her on the swings. They had dinner at home, did her homework together, read 3 stories before bed, including the new rabbit book. Mia loved it. "The rabbit was scared like me," she said, "but it got better." "Just like you're getting better," Daniel agreed. "Just like you're getting better too, Daddy," out of the mouths of babes. That weekend, Daniel did something he'd been putting off. He cleaned out Emma's closet, not to forget her, but to make space for the future. He kept her favorite sweater, the one that still smelled like her perfume, and a few special items for Mia when she was older. But the rest he donated, creating physical space that matched the emotional space that was slowly opening in his heart. Grief would always be there. Emma would always be Mia's mother, would always be the woman Daniel had loved. But he was learning that honoring her memory didn't mean stopping his own life. It meant living fully, raising their daughter with the joy and presence Emma would have wanted. On Monday morning, Daniel arrived at work to find an email from Isabel, asking him to attend the executive leadership meeting at 10. He'd never been invited to these before. They were reserved for VPs and above. His new title didn't technically qualify him. He arrived at the conference room to find Isabel and 8 other executives gathered around the massive table. Isabel gestured for him to sit. "Everyone, I've asked Daniel to join us today because I want him to present his perspective on sustainable high-performance culture. Daniel has experienced both the worst of our old ways and has been integral to developing our new approach. Daniel, would you mind sharing your thoughts?" Put on the spot, Daniel took a breath and spoke from the heart. He talked about the weeks of unsustainable pressure, the impossible choices between providing for his daughter and being present for her. He talked about the physical and emotional cost of a culture that measured commitment by exhaustion. And he talked about the transformation he'd witnessed, not just in policies, but in daily interactions, in how leaders asked about people's lives, in the space created for humanity alongside excellence. The room was silent when he finished. Then the CFO, a silver-haired man named Robert Chen, spoke up. "I've been with this company for 15 years. I watched it change after Richard passed, watched it become something I didn't recognize. I almost left twice. But these past few weeks, I've seen glimpses of what we used to be. What we could be again." He looked at Isabel. "You're doing the right thing. Your father would be proud." Isabel's eyes shone with unshed tears, but she nodded briskly. "Then let's make sure we don't backslide. Every person at this table is responsible for maintaining this culture. If you see problems, you speak up. If you see someone struggling, you intervene. We're building something sustainable here, and that requires constant vigilance." The meeting continued with discussions of metrics, policies, implementation challenges, but the tone was different from what Daniel imagined these meetings used to be. People spoke honestly about struggles. They admitted mistakes. They collaborated rather than competed. As Daniel left the conference room 2 hours later, Isabel caught his arm. "Thank you for that, for being vulnerable in front of the leadership team. I know it wasn't easy. If my story prevents what happened to me from happening to someone else, it's worth the discomfort." Isabel studied his face. "You're remarkable, you know that? Most people would have left, would have sued even. You had every right to burn this place down. But instead you came back and helped me rebuild it. I came back because I saw that you meant it, that you were genuinely trying to change. And because," Daniel paused, considering his words, "because I believe in second chances, for companies and for people." Something shifted in Isabel's expression, became almost vulnerable. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. How did you forgive me? Really forgive me? Not just professionally, but actually let go of what I did to you?" Daniel thought about Mia's simple wisdom. She said, "Sorry. That's what you're supposed to do. And then you try to be better. I forgave you because you showed me you were sorry, not just with words, but with actions. You changed policies, sought therapy, restructured the entire company. You didn't just apologize, you transformed. That's rare. That's worth forgiving." Isabel nodded slowly, blinking rapidly. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." As Daniel walked back to his office, he felt a strange sense of peace. The past months had been brutal, had nearly destroyed him, but they'd also led to this, meaningful change, a healthier workplace, a boss who'd found her humanity. And sometimes, Daniel was learning, the breaking was necessary for the rebuilding. That evening, as he tucked Mia into bed, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, are you happy now?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean, sweetheart? You smile more. You laugh. You're not so tired. Are you happy?" Daniel considered the question honestly. Was he happy? His wife was still gone. His job had nearly killed him. He was a single parent navigating trauma and healing and impossible balancing acts. But he was also here, present, in this moment with his daughter. He had work that fulfilled him and a boss who valued him. He had a future that felt possible instead of crushing. "Yeah, baby," he said softly. "I think I am. Are you happy?" Mia nodded, her blonde hair spreading across the pillow. "I like having my daddy back. I like being back." He kissed her forehead, turned out the light, and stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her settle into sleep. This, he thought, was what mattered. Not mergers or projections or corporate success. This small person, this precious life entrusted to him, this chance to be the father she deserved. Everything else was just details. In her penthouse, Isabel stood at her window looking out at the glittering city. Her therapist's words echoed in her mind. "You can't control everything, Isabel, and trying to do so only creates suffering for others and for yourself." She was learning. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely learning. Learning to trust others, to delegate, to believe that excellence didn't require sacrifice of humanity. Learning that her father's legacy wasn't about being harder or stronger, but about building something that lasted because it valued the people who made it possible. Learning, most of all, that sometimes the greatest act of leadership was admitting you were wrong and having the courage to change. She'd caused real harm. To Daniel, to countless others before him. That guilt would stay with her, should stay with her. But it didn't have to define her. She could carry it and use it to fuel transformation, to build something better. Daniel Foster had given her that chance. By surviving, by returning, by believing she could change. She wouldn't waste it. 3 months passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Daniel thrived in his new role, building a team culture that balanced excellence with sustainability. His analysts respected him, trusted him, and most importantly, they went home at reasonable hours with their health and relationships intact. The Bergman account came back as promised, and with it, 3 additional major clients who cited Crown Capital's cultural transformation as a deciding factor in their choice. Isabel continued her own evolution, attending therapy religiously, checking in with employees at all levels, and visibly correcting herself when she slipped into old patterns. The company wasn't perfect, old habits died hard, and there were still executives who resented the new policies. But it was undeniably better. Daniel and Isabel developed an unexpected working relationship built on mutual respect and hard-won trust. They had weekly one-on-ones where they discussed not just strategy and performance, but how his team was doing, whether anyone seemed stressed, if the workload felt sustainable. She asked about Mia regularly, remembered details about her school events, even sent a bouquet of flowers when Mia performed in her school's winter concert. It was professional, cordial, sometimes almost friendly. But it remained carefully boundaried. Daniel was grateful for the changes Isabel had made, but he never forgot what had driven those changes. The scar tissue from those brutal weeks remained, a reminder to never become complacent about his own well-being or that of his team. Then came the Friday that shattered everything. Daniel was wrapping up his day, looking forward to the weekend he'd planned with Mia. The zoo tomorrow, pancake breakfast on Sunday, maybe a movie. His phone rang just as he was packing his bag. An unknown number with an Arizona area code. "Hello? Is this Daniel Foster?" A woman's voice, official and cool. "Yes, this is Daniel." "Mr. Foster, this is Linda Marsh from Child Protective Services in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm calling about your daughter, Amelia Foster." Daniel's blood turned to ice. "What about Mia? She's at school in New York. What are you talking about?" "Sir, we have Amelia in our custody. She was picked up from her school this afternoon by your sister-in-law, Sharon Reed, who transported her to Arizona. Ms. Reed has filed for emergency custody, citing concerns about your ability to care for the child." The world tilted. Daniel grabbed his desk to steady himself. "What? Sharon can't. Mia is my daughter. Sharon has no right. Ms. Reed claims to be the child's maternal aunt and legal guardian as designated in the late Mrs. Foster's will. She's provided documentation suggesting you've been neglectful, including medical records of your recent hospitalization for what she characterizes as a mental breakdown." "That's not—" "I collapsed from exhaustion, not a mental breakdown. And Emma's will designated Sharon as guardian only if both parents were deceased. I'm very much alive." "Nevertheless, sir, we have to investigate these claims. Amelia is safe and in temporary foster care while we sort this out. You'll need to come to Arizona immediately and bring documentation of your custody rights, financial stability, and mental fitness." Daniel's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. "Where's my daughter? I need to talk to her." "I can arrange a supervised phone call, but Mr. Foster, I have to advise you that any contact must go through proper channels. Ms. Reed has filed a restraining order claiming you're unstable and potentially dangerous to the child." "This is insane. Sharon and I haven't spoken in 18 months. She never approved of me, but she has no grounds. That's for the courts to decide. I'll email you the case information and the requirements for documentation. I strongly suggest you retain a lawyer immediately." The call ended. Daniel stood frozen in his office, his mind unable to process what he'd just heard. Sharon had taken Mia, had somehow gotten her out of school, transported her across state lines, and filed for custody. His daughter was in Arizona with strangers, probably terrified, wondering where her father was. The room spun. Daniel sat down hard, his breath coming in short gasps. No, not now. He couldn't have a panic attack now. Mia needed him. He had to think clearly, had to act, had to... His office door burst open. Isabel stood there, her face pale. "Daniel, Patricia just got a call from Mia's school. They said there was an incident, that someone picked her up claiming to be family, and..." She stopped, seeing his face. "What happened?" "Sharon took her." Daniel's voice sounded distant, hollow. "Emma's sister. She took Mia to Arizona and filed for custody. CPS has her. My daughter is in foster care." "What?" "She can't do that. That's kidnapping." "Apparently she can if she claims I'm an unfit parent. She's using my collapse as evidence of mental instability." Daniel's laugh was bitter, broken. "The thing that happened because of this job is now being used to take away my daughter." Isabel's expression shifted through shock, horror, and something fierce that Daniel couldn't quite name. She pulled out her phone and dialed. "Patricia, cancel everything on my schedule. Everything. I don't care what it is." Pause. "No, including the board dinner. Family emergency." She hung up and looked at Daniel. "When's the next flight to Phoenix?" "What? When's the next flight?" We need to get you to Arizona now. You need lawyers, documentation, character witnesses. We need to move fast before this gets more complicated. Daniel stared at her. Isabel, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Daniel, this is my fault. If I hadn't pushed you to the point of collapse, Sharon wouldn't have ammunition. I'm not letting you fight this alone. She was already typing on her phone. My family has lawyers in Arizona, good ones. I'm calling them now. I can't afford. I'm paying. Don't argue. Your daughter needs you focused, not worried about legal bills. Isabel's voice was steel wrapped in urgency. There's a flight at 7. I'm booking 2 tickets. You're not doing this alone. Something in Daniel's chest cracked open. He wanted to protest, to maintain professional boundaries, to refuse her help out of pride or caution. But Mia was in foster care in Arizona, and pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. Okay, he whispered. Thank you. The next 2 hours were a blur. Isabel's lawyers, a firm that apparently specialized in family law and had connections throughout the Southwest, were mobilized within minutes. They began compiling documentation: Daniel's clean criminal record, his financial statements, medical records with full context, character references from Mia's therapist, teachers, and pediatrician. Isabel herself wrote a letter detailing the circumstances of Daniel's collapse, taking full responsibility for the working conditions that had led to his hospitalization and vouching for his character and fitness as a parent. At the airport, sitting in the first-class seats Isabel had booked, Daniel finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of terror. Mia was somewhere in Phoenix, surrounded by strangers, probably crying for him. She'd already lost her mother. The thought of her losing him too, of being trapped with Sharon who'd never wanted children and had always viewed Mia as an inconvenience. She's going to be okay. Isabel's voice cut through his spiral. We're going to fix this. You don't know that. I know that you're a good father. I know that you've sacrificed everything for that little girl. I know that no judge who sees the full picture could possibly rule against you. Unless they only see what Sharon wants them to see. My collapse, my single-parent household, my demanding job. Daniel's voice cracked. What if they think she's better off with family, with Emma's sister? Isabel turned to face him fully. Then we show them the truth. We show them the father who brings his daughter to the office rather than leave her alone, who restructured his entire career to be present for her, who collapsed because he was working himself to death to provide for her. That's not neglect, Daniel. That's devotion. The flight attendant brought drinks. Daniel couldn't touch his. His stomach was twisted into knots, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Isabel seemed to sense his spiraling and began talking, her voice low and steady, about logistics and plans and actionable steps. It helped, having concrete things to focus on rather than the abstract horror of separation from his child. They landed in Phoenix at 10:47 p.m. local time. A car was waiting, arranged by Isabel's lawyers, and drove them straight to a hotel near the courthouse. In the lobby, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes stood waiting. Mr. Foster, I'm Margaret Chen, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates. Ms. Crown has retained us to represent you. They shook hands. Margaret's grip was firm, confident. I've reviewed the initial filing from Ms. Reed. It's concerning but not insurmountable. The fact that she transported a minor across state lines without custodial rights is actually a point in our favor. We're filing an emergency motion first thing Monday morning. Monday? Daniel's voice was desperate. That's 3 days away. My daughter, I understand. I've already arranged for you to have a supervised visit tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's the best I could do on a Friday night, but I have contacts in the system who owe me favors. Relief flooded through Daniel so intensely he had to sit down. He'd see Mia tomorrow. He could tell her he was here, that he was fighting for her, that everything would be okay. Margaret sat down across from him, Isabel beside him. Now, I need to understand the full situation, start from the beginning. Your relationship with Sharon Reed, the circumstances of your wife's death, everything that's led to this moment. For the next 2 hours, Daniel told his story. Emma's sudden death, Sharon's immediate disapproval of how he was raising Mia, the gradual estrangement as Sharon became more critical and demanding. He explained about the will. Emma had written it when Mia was born, naming Sharon as guardian if both parents died, but had always meant to update it as their relationship soured. She'd never gotten the chance. He told Margaret about his job, the pressure, the collapse. He didn't spare himself or Isabel, laying out the brutal truth of what had happened and why. Isabel sat silently through it all, her face growing paler as Daniel described the weeks leading up to his hospitalization. When he finished, Margaret nodded slowly. All right, here's what we're dealing with. Sharon Reed has technically violated federal kidnapping laws by transporting Mia across state lines. However, she's claiming she acted in the child's best interest based on genuine concern, which muddies the waters. The restraining order she filed is flimsy, based entirely on your medical incident, but it gives her temporary leverage. How do we fight it? Isabel asked. We demonstrate that Mr. Foster is stable, employed, devoted, and that the child's best interest is clearly to be with her father. We also need to show that Sharon's motivations are suspect. Mr. Foster, did Sharon have any particular reason to act now, 3 months after your hospitalization? Daniel thought back. She called me 6 weeks ago, asked if I'd consider sending Mia to live with her for the summer, said I was clearly overwhelmed. I told her no, that Mia and I were doing great. She got angry, said I was being selfish, that Emma would be ashamed of me. And you haven't spoken since? No, she sent a few texts that I ignored. They were just more criticism about my parenting. Margaret made notes. We'll subpoena her phone records, show a pattern of harassment and an ulterior motive. Mr. Foster, I'm going to be blunt. This is going to be expensive and potentially ugly. Sharon will try to paint you as unstable and neglectful. She'll use your collapse, your demanding job, probably your decision to bring Mia to the office those nights. We need to be prepared for that. I'll do whatever it takes. Good. Ms. Crown, I understand you're willing to testify. Absolutely. I'll testify about the circumstances of Daniel's collapse, my responsibility for it, and the changes I've implemented since. I'll vouch for his character and his dedication to his daughter. Margaret smiled slightly. A billionaire CEO taking the stand to defend her employees' parenting? That'll play well. The narrative writes itself. Devoted single father pushed to the brink by demanding job, but even in crisis, never neglected his child. Boss recognizes her mistake, transforms entire company culture. Father returns to work in healthier environment and continues to excel as both employee and parent. It's compelling. It's also the truth, Isabel said quietly. Even better. Margaret stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow's visit with Mia will be hard. She'll be confused and scared. But it's important that you stay calm and reassuring. Don't badmouth Sharon in front of the social worker. Don't make promises you can't keep. Just be present and loving. After Margaret left, Daniel and Isabel stood in the hotel lobby, exhaustion finally catching up with them both. You should go to your room, Daniel said. Get some sleep. So should you. I won't be able to. But thank you, Isabel, for all of this. For coming here, for the lawyers, for everything. Isabel looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Daniel, I told you I'd make things right. I meant it. This situation exists because of choices I made, pressure I applied. If helping you get your daughter back is what it takes to begin to balance those scales, then it's the least I can do. This goes beyond making things right professionally. I know. Isabel's voice was soft. But somewhere in the past few months, you stopped being just an employee to me. You became someone I respect, someone I care about. And Mia, her voice caught. That little girl deserves her father. I'm going to make sure she gets him back. Something passed between them in that moment, something unnamed and complicated. Then Isabel stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. Get some rest, Daniel. Tomorrow, we start fighting. In his hotel room, Daniel tried to sleep but couldn't. He kept imagining Mia in some stranger's house, clutching her stuffed rabbit, crying for him. He texted Margaret Chen at 2 a.m. asking if there was any way to see Mia sooner. She responded within minutes. I know this is agony, but the morning visit is the soonest possible. Try to rest. She needs you strong. At 3 a.m., there was a soft knock on his door. Daniel opened it to find Isabel standing there in sweatpants and a Columbia University t-shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked young and uncertain. I couldn't sleep either, she said, and I thought maybe you shouldn't be alone right now. Daniel stepped back, letting her in. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the television playing silently, neither of them really watching. Tell me about Emma, Isabel said suddenly. If you want to. I know so little about your life before the company. So Daniel talked. He told her about meeting Emma in college, how she'd been studying to be a teacher, how she'd had this laugh that could light up a room. He told her about their wedding on a beach in Maine, about Emma's pregnancy with Mia, about the pure joy on her face when they'd brought their daughter home from the hospital. And he told her about the morning Emma died, how she'd kissed him goodbye, said she'd pick up Mia from daycare, mentioned having a headache, how he'd gotten the call 3 hours later that she'd collapsed at work. Brain aneurysm. She'd been dead before the ambulance arrived. Mia was 2, Daniel said, his voice rough. Old enough to know Mommy was gone, not old enough to understand death. She kept asking when Mommy was coming home. It took months before she stopped setting a place for Emma at dinner. Isabel's eyes were bright with tears. I'm so sorry. Sharon blamed me somehow, said if Emma hadn't been stressed about money, about me working so much, maybe it wouldn't have happened, which is insane. Aneurysms aren't caused by stress, but grief makes people irrational. She started visiting constantly, criticizing everything I did. How I fed Mia, bathed her, put her to bed. Nothing was good enough. I finally had to cut contact for my own sanity and Mia's well-being. And now she's using your love for your daughter against you. Yes. They sat in silence for a while. Then Isabel said, My father died of a heart attack. Massive coronary while at his desk, reviewing quarterly reports. He was 62, seemed healthy, just dropped dead one Tuesday afternoon. I didn't know it was so sudden. The whole company went into shock. And I was supposed to grieve, supposed to take time, but instead I threw myself into proving I could fill his shoes. I thought the best way to honor him was to be him. Strong, demanding, uncompromising, but I missed the point entirely. What do you mean? Isabel pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them in a gesture that made her look impossibly young. My father was demanding, yes. He had high standards, but he also knew every employee's name, asked about their families, gave generous Christmas bonuses and college scholarships for their kids. He built a culture of excellence, but he never forgot the human element. When he died, grown men cried at his funeral. Not because they feared him, but because they loved him. And you tried to command that kind of loyalty through force. I tried to command respect through fear. I thought strength meant never bending, never showing vulnerability, never accepting anything less than perfection. And all I did was create misery. She looked at Daniel. You showed me what real strength looks like, showing up for your daughter even when you were falling apart, asking for help, surviving and then choosing to forgive and rebuild. That's courage. Daniel didn't know what to say. In the dim hotel room, with both their guards down and their fears laid bare, something shifted between them. The careful professional boundary blurred into something more complicated, more human. We should try to sleep, Isabel finally said, standing. You need to be rested for Mia. But at the door, she paused. Daniel? Whatever happens, however this plays out, I'm not leaving until it's resolved. You and Mia aren't alone in this. After she left, Daniel lay in bed watching the sky slowly lighten through the window. He thought about Emma, about how she'd always believed the best in people, had always seen potential for good even in difficult situations. If she could see him now, in a Phoenix hotel room, fighting for their daughter, supported by the woman who'd nearly destroyed him, what would she think? She'd probably laugh at the irony. And then she'd tell him to fight like hell. At 9:30 a.m., Daniel and Margaret Chen arrived at the CPS building. Isabel had offered to come, but Margaret advised against it. The fewer people at the supervised visit, the better. Isabel had hugged him before he left the hotel, a brief, fierce embrace that spoke volumes. Bring your daughter home, she'd whispered. Now, sitting in a bland waiting room with institutional furniture and children's drawings taped to the walls, Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. Every second felt like an hour. At 9:58, a social worker appeared, a young man with kind eyes and a clipboard. Mr. Foster, I'm James Rivera. I'll be supervising your visit with Amelia. Before we go in, I need to remind you that this is an evaluation as well as a visit. I'll be observing your interaction and making notes for the court. I understand. Amelia has been told you're coming. She's very upset. She doesn't understand why she can't go home with you. Please do your best to keep her calm and not make promises about when she'll see you again. Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. James led him down a hallway to a small room furnished with a couch, some toys, and a table. And there, sitting on the couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit, was Mia. She looked up as he entered. For a heartbeat, her face was blank with shock. Then she screamed, "Daddy!" and launched herself at him. Daniel caught her, lifted her, held her so tightly he was afraid he might hurt her but couldn't make himself let go. Mia was sobbing, her small body shaking, her fingers digging into his shoulders. "Daddy, I want to go home. Please take me home. Please, Daddy, please." "Shh, baby, I'm here. I'm here now." "Aunt Sharon said you were sick. She said I had to come with her. She took me from school and I didn't want to go, but she said you said it was okay, but you didn't, did you? You didn't say I had to go?" Daniel's jaw clenched with rage at Sharon, but he kept his voice calm and gentle. "No, sweetheart. I never said that. Aunt Sharon made a mistake. But I'm here now, and I'm going to fix it. Can we go home? Can we go now?" This was the moment James had warned him about. Daniel glanced at the social worker, saw the sympathy in his eyes, and chose his words carefully. "Not today, baby. There are some grown-up things we have to work out first. But I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to bring you home as fast as possible. I don't want to stay here. The people are nice, but it's not home. I want my room and my toys, and I want you to make me breakfast and read me stories." "I know. I want that too. And we're going to have all of that again very soon." They sat together on the couch, Mia in Daniel's lap, and for the next hour they just existed together. Daniel asked about the foster home, making sure she was being treated well. Mia said the foster parents were kind but had 3 other kids and it was loud and confusing. She missed her school, her friends, her routine. "How come Aunt Sharon did this?" Mia asked. "Why did she take me away from you?" Daniel took a breath, choosing honesty over platitudes. "Sometimes adults make mistakes because they think they're doing the right thing. Aunt Sharon thinks you'd be better off living with her. But she's wrong, Mia. You and I belong together, and I'm going to prove that to the people who make these decisions." "Are you really better now? Aunt Sharon said you were too sick to take care of me." "I'm completely healthy, sweetheart. The doctors checked me and said I'm fine, and my job is different now, much better. I get to come home at normal times and spend weekends with you and never miss your school events. Everything is better." Mia studied his face with her serious eyes. "Promise?" "I promise. Cross my heart." She seemed satisfied with that. They read books together from the room's small library. They colored pictures. Mia told him about a dream she'd had about Mommy, how in the dream Emma had told her that Daddy would always take care of her. "And I will," Daniel whispered. "Always." When the hour ended, Mia's tears started fresh. James had to gently pry her off Daniel, both of them crying now. Daniel kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hair. "Be brave for a little longer, okay? I'm going to see you again very soon." "When?" "Maybe tomorrow. Definitely soon." "I love you, Daddy. I love you more than anything in the whole world, Mia. Don't ever forget that." James led Mia away, her sobs echoing down the hallway. Daniel stood frozen in the visitation room, his heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. In the parking lot, Margaret was waiting. She took one look at Daniel's face and said, "I know, it's brutal, but James is one of the good ones. If he saw what I think he saw, a loving, present father and a child who desperately wants to be with him, it'll help our case." Daniel couldn't speak. He got in Margaret's car and stared out the window at the Phoenix desert landscape, so different from New York, so foreign and wrong. His daughter was somewhere in this city, crying for him, and he couldn't do anything except wait and trust strangers to make the right decision. Back at the hotel, Isabel was waiting in the lobby. She stood when she saw him, reading everything in his face. "How bad?" "She doesn't understand why she can't come home. She's scared and confused, and I had to leave her there." Daniel's voice broke. "Isabel, I can't do this. I can't leave her in foster care while lawyers argue over paperwork. She's 6 years old. She just lost her mother 2 years ago. This is going to traumatize her. Then we make sure it ends fast. Come on. Isabel led him to a conference room the hotel had let them use. Inside, Margaret and two other lawyers were set up with laptops and files spread across the table. We're filing the emergency motion Monday morning, Margaret said, but I've been thinking there might be a faster way. What way? We confront Sharon directly, not legally. She has lawyers and she'll hide behind them. But personally, she's staying at a hotel here in Phoenix. What if you and Ms. Crown paid her a visit tonight? Daniel frowned. For what purpose? To show her what she's really doing, to make her see the damage she's causing to Mia. Sometimes in these cases, the best resolution doesn't come from courts. It comes from people remembering their humanity. It was risky. Sharon was vindictive and stubborn. But sitting in court for weeks while Mia remained in foster care seemed worse. Let's do it, Daniel said. At 11 p.m., Daniel and Isabel stood outside Sharon's hotel room door. Daniel knocked, his heart pounding. After a long moment, the door opened. Sharon Reed looked exactly as Daniel remembered, tall and thin with Emma's blonde hair, but none of her warmth. When she saw Daniel, her expression hardened. You shouldn't be here. There's a restraining order. That's for contact with Mia, and you know it, Daniel said quietly. Sharon, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. Isabel stepped forward. Ms. Reed, I'm Isabel Crown, Daniel's employer. May we come in? This conversation should be private. Something in Isabel's tone, authoritative but not aggressive, made Sharon hesitate. Then she stepped back, letting them enter. The hotel room was neat, impersonal. Sharon stood by the window, arms crossed defensively. You had no right to take Mia, Daniel started. I had every right. Emma's will designated you as guardian if we were both dead. I'm alive, Sharon. You kidnapped my daughter. I saved her from a father who's falling apart. You collapsed, Daniel. You were hospitalized for a mental breakdown. It wasn't a mental breakdown. Isabel's voice cut through the room like a blade. It was acute exhaustion from overwork that I caused as his employer. I pushed Daniel too hard, demanded too much, created an unsustainable work environment. That's on me, not him. And I've spent the past 3 months ensuring it never happens again. Sharon's eyes narrowed. You're a billionaire CEO. You're just protecting yourself from liability. I'm protecting the truth, Isabel said evenly. And the truth is that Daniel Foster is an exceptional father who sacrificed his health to provide for his daughter. The truth is that when faced with impossible pressure, he brought Mia to the office rather than leave her alone. That's not neglect. That's devotion. He had his 6-year-old sleeping in an office at midnight. Because I gave him impossible deadlines. Isabel stepped closer. Because I created an environment where he had to choose between his job and his daughter, and he found a way to keep both. If you want to blame someone for that situation, blame me. But don't punish Mia by separating her from the one parent she has left. Sharon's face flushed with anger. You don't understand. Emma would be horrified by how he's raising Mia. Emma trusted me with our daughter, Daniel said softly. She made me Mia's father. The only reason your name is in that will is because it was written 6 years ago when we needed someone local in case of emergency. Emma was going to change it. We talked about it multiple times. She just never got the chance. That's convenient to say now that she's dead. It's the truth. Sharon, I know you and I have never gotten along. I know you think Emma made a mistake marrying me. But this isn't about us. This is about Mia. And Mia loves me, needs me, wants to come home with me. She needs stability, structure. A parent who isn't going to collapse from stress. She has that, Isabel interjected. Daniel's position has been restructured with reasonable hours, adequate support, mandatory time off. He's financially stable, emotionally healthy, and completely devoted to his daughter. What more do you want? Sharon's eyes filled with sudden tears. I want my sister back. I want Emma alive and raising her daughter. Her voice broke. I want to feel like I'm protecting what's left of her. And there it was. The real reason beneath all the accusations and anger. Sharon wasn't trying to hurt Mia. She was trying to hold on to Emma the only way she knew how. Daniel's anger softened into something closer to compassion. I miss her too. Every single day. And I know that Mia looks like her, sounds like her, has her laugh. I know it's painful to see her being raised without Emma. You're doing it wrong, Sharon whispered. Her hair. Emma would have braided it differently. Her clothes. Emma had specific ideas about what was appropriate. Her diet, her schedule, everything. It's not how Emma would have wanted. Maybe not, Daniel admitted. But Emma isn't here, and I'm doing the best I can to honor her memory while raising our daughter in the real world with the resources and knowledge I have. Is it perfect? No, but it's done with love, Sharon. So much love. Sharon sank into a chair, her face in her hands. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she looked up, her eyes red and wet. She cried for an hour after you left today. The foster mother called me. Mia won't eat, won't sleep. She just wants you. Then let her come home. Drop the custody petition. Let me take my daughter back to New York where she belongs. And if you collapse again? If the job becomes too much again? It won't, Isabel said firmly. I give you my word as CEO of Crown Capital that Daniel's working conditions are sustainable and healthy. And if you'd like, I'll put that in writing with specific commitments about hours, workload, and support. You'll have legal recourse if we violate those terms. Sharon looked between them, seeing something she hadn't expected. You really care about him, both of you, about him and Mia. Yes, Isabel said simply. I do. Sharon was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Emma used to talk about you, Daniel. She said you were the kindest man she'd ever met, that you made her feel safe and loved and cherished. I was jealous, I think. My marriage was falling apart, and my little sister had found this perfect partnership. It wasn't perfect, Daniel said gently. We argued about money, about work-life balance, about whose turn it was to do dishes. But we loved each other. And we both loved Mia more than anything. I know you did. When Emma died, I felt like I'd lost my chance to be part of Mia's life. You and I never clicked, and I thought I'd never get to know my niece. That doesn't have to be true. Sharon, if you drop this petition, if you let Mia come home, I promise I'll make space for you in her life. Regular calls, visits during school breaks, photos, and updates. You're her aunt. You're Emma's sister. You deserve to know her. Sharon looked at Daniel for a long time, tears streaming down her face. Then she nodded slowly. Okay. I'll call my lawyer in the morning. I'll drop the petition. Relief hit Daniel so hard he had to sit down. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. But I want what you promised, regular contact. And if things ever get bad again, if Mia ever seems neglected or unhappy, I'm going to intervene. Properly this time, through lawyers and courts, but I will intervene. Fair enough. They worked out details, monthly video calls, a week-long visit each summer, Christmas alternating years. Sharon would fly to New York for Mia's birthday. Daniel would send school reports and photos regularly. It wasn't perfect, but it was a framework for healing. At the door, Sharon looked at Isabel. Take care of them, both of them. I will, Isabel promised. Back in the hotel lobby at 1 a.m, Daniel felt like he'd run a marathon. But it was done. Mia could come home. I can't believe that worked, he said. Grief makes people do irrational things, Isabel replied. But underneath the anger, Sharon loves Mia. She just needed to see that loving her meant letting her stay with you. Daniel looked at this woman who'd flown across the country for him, who'd hired lawyers and testified and confronted his dead wife's sister in a hotel room at midnight. This woman who'd nearly destroyed him and then spent months rebuilding him. Why are you really doing all this? He asked quietly. Isabel met his eyes. Because 3 months ago, I watched a good man collapse because of my cruelty, and his daughter asked me if I'd made him sick. That question changed my life, Daniel. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure that little girl gets her father back. I can make sure you both have the future you deserve. There's more to it than that. Maybe, Isabel admitted. Maybe somewhere along the way you both became important to me, more important than I expected, more important than is probably wise. The air between them charged with something unspoken, Then Isabel stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. Get some sleep. Margaret will handle the paperwork in the morning. With Sharon dropping the petition, you should have Mia back by afternoon. She walked away, leaving Daniel standing in the empty lobby, his heart full of gratitude and something else, something complicated and confusing and entirely unexpected. Tomorrow, he'd hold his daughter again. Tomorrow, they'd go home. And somewhere in the future, they'd build together. Maybe there'd be room for forgiveness to become something more. The paperwork took 4 hours instead of the promised afternoon, but by 3 p.m. on Monday, Daniel stood outside the CPS building holding Mia so tightly she squeaked in protest. She didn't complain beyond that small sound, just wrapped her arms and legs around him like a koala and buried her face in his neck. "We're going home, baby," Daniel whispered into her hair. "We're going home right now." Isabel stood a few feet away, giving them space but watching with an expression so tender it made Daniel's chest ache. When Mia finally pulled back enough to look around, she saw Isabel, and her face lit up. "You came too. You helped Daddy get me back." "I did," Isabel said, stepping closer. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Mia nodded seriously. "I'm okay now. I was scared, but Daddy promised he'd fix it, and he did. He always keeps his promises." The simple faith in those words, the absolute trust, made Daniel's eyes sting. He'd almost lost this, almost lost the right to be the person Mia believed in. The flight back to New York was nothing like the desperate journey to Phoenix. Mia sat between Daniel and Isabel, chattering about everything and nothing, processing her fear through words. She told them about the foster home's dog, about the social worker James who'd been kind to her, about how she'd been brave like Daddy told her to be. "Aunt Sharon called me this morning," Mia said. "She said she was sorry for scaring me. She said she loves me and wants to visit for my birthday. Can she, Daddy?" "Of course she can," Daniel said, stroking her hair. "Aunt Sharon made a mistake, but she loves you very much. Like how your boss made a mistake when she made you work too much, but now she's nice and everything is better?" Daniel caught Isabel's eye over Mia's head. Isabel's lips quirked in a small smile. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. "Exactly like that," Daniel agreed. They landed at JFK at 11 p.m. Mia had fallen asleep on Daniel's shoulder an hour into the flight and hadn't stirred. As they walked through the terminal, Isabel's phone buzzed repeatedly. She glanced at it and sighed. "The board has been trying to reach me all day. I've been ignoring them." "You should probably call them back. They can wait until tomorrow. Some things are more important than board meetings." At the car service pickup, they stood in the fluorescent lighting while the driver loaded luggage. Mia stirred, lifted her head groggily. "Are we home?" "Almost, baby. 15 more minutes." She settled back against Daniel, thumb in her mouth. Isabel watched them with an expression Daniel was beginning to recognize. Longing mixed with something like wonder, as if she was seeing something she hadn't known existed. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly. "For everything. The lawyers, the flight, coming with me. I couldn't have done this without you." "You would have found a way. You always do." "Maybe, but it would have been a lot harder and a lot lonelier." The car pulled up. They drove through the city in comfortable silence, Mia dozing between them. When they reached Daniel's apartment building in Queens, Isabel started to get out too. "I'll help you get her upstairs," she said. Mrs. Chen was waiting in Daniel's apartment, having let herself in with the spare key he'd given her. She'd stocked the fridge, made up Mia's bed with fresh sheets, and left a pot of soup warming on the stove. When she saw them, her face crinkled with relief. "You got her back, thank heavens." "We did. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Chen." The older woman waved off his gratitude, hugged Mia gently, and left them to settle in. Daniel carried his daughter to her room, helped her into pajamas, tucked her into her own bed surrounded by her own toys in her own space. "I love my room," Mia whispered. "I missed it so much." "It missed you too." "But, Daddy, will you sleep in here tonight? I don't want to be alone." Daniel's heart clenched. "Of course, baby. I'll be right here on the floor beside you." "You can sleep in my bed. It's big enough." So Daniel curled up next to his daughter in her twin bed, her small body pressed against his side, and felt more grateful than he'd ever been in his life. She was safe. She was home. She was his. When her breathing evened out into sleep, Daniel carefully extracted himself and went to the living room. Isabel was sitting on the couch, looking exhausted but peaceful. "She's asleep," Daniel said. "Finally. Good. She needs rest. You both do. You should go home. You've done enough. I will in a minute. I just wanted to make sure you were both settled." Isabel stood, gathered her coat. At the door, she paused. "Daniel, I know things are going to be busy with getting Mia back into her routine, but when things calm down, maybe we could have dinner, just to talk about work and life and everything that's happened." There was something careful in the invitation, something that suggested it meant more than a simple professional dinner. Daniel recognized it because he felt it too, this shift that had happened between them over the past few days, over the past few months, really. "I'd like that," he said. Isabel smiled, genuine and warm. "Good. I'll call you later this week." After she left, Daniel stood in his quiet apartment and tried to process everything that had happened. 4 days ago, his daughter had been taken. Now she was back, safe in her bed. 4 months ago, he'd collapsed in an elevator. Now he had a job he loved and a boss who'd flown across the country to help him. Life had a strange way of breaking things apart so they could be rebuilt better. The next morning, Daniel called in to work and took a personal day. He spent it entirely with Mia, taking her to her favorite diner for chocolate chip pancakes, then to the park where they fed ducks and played on the swings. Normal, beautiful, ordinary things. In the afternoon, they visited Mia's therapist for an emergency session to help her process the Arizona ordeal. Dr. Sarah Lynn was a gentle woman in her 40s who'd been working with Mia since Emma's death. She listened carefully as Mia recounted being taken by Aunt Sharon, staying with strangers, missing her daddy. "And how do you feel now that you're home?" Dr. Lynn asked. "Safe," Mia said simply, "and happy. But sometimes I get scared that someone will take me away again." "That's a very normal feeling after what you went through, but Mia, I want you to know that what happened was very unusual. Your daddy has full custody of you, and no one can take you away from him without very serious reasons. Aunt Sharon said Daddy was too sick to take care of me. Your daddy had a health problem caused by work stress, but he's completely better now. Right, Mr. Foster?" "Right," Daniel confirmed. "And my job is different now. I have help, better hours, and I'm taking care of myself so I can take care of you." They talked for another 30 minutes, Dr. Lynn giving Mia tools for managing anxiety and fear. As they left, Dr. Lynn pulled Daniel aside. "She's resilient. Kids are amazingly resilient, but keep an eye out for nightmares, separation anxiety, regression in behavior. And Mr. Foster, make sure you're taking care of your own mental health too. This was traumatic for both of you." Daniel promised he would. That evening, after Mia was asleep, he called the therapist his cardiologist had recommended and made an appointment for himself. Dr. Lynn was right. He needed to process this too. Wednesday morning, Daniel returned to work. His team greeted him with relief and curiosity. Word had spread about the custody crisis, though details were vague. Marcus pulled him aside. "Boss, are you okay? Is Mia okay?" "We're both fine. It's been resolved. If you need anything at all, the whole team has your back." The support touched Daniel deeply. 4 months ago, this had been a cutthroat environment where showing weakness meant getting crushed. Now his team was offering genuine care and concern. Isabel had changed more than just policies. She'd changed hearts. At 10 a.m., Isabel's assistant Patricia called to ask if Daniel could come to the 71st floor. Daniel took the elevator up, wondering what this meeting would bring. Everything felt different now, charged with possibility and uncertainty in equal measure. Isabel was waiting in her office, looking polished and professional in a navy suit. But when she saw Daniel, her expression softened. "How's Mia?" "Adjusting. She had a good session with her therapist yesterday. She's back at school today." "And you?" "I'm okay. Grateful. Still processing." Isabel gestured for him to sit. "I wanted to talk to you about something. The board met yesterday, and I briefed them on what happened in Arizona." Daniel's stomach tightened. And they were impressed. Not by the crisis itself, obviously, but by how we handled it. By the demonstration of the company's commitment to employees and their families. Several board members said it was exactly the kind of culture shift they'd hoped to see. That's good. Daniel, they want to make you a vice president, VP of Strategic Analysis and Culture Development. You'd have a seat at executive meetings, significant input into company policy, and a substantial raise. You'd be responsible not just for your team, but for ensuring the cultural changes we've implemented continue to evolve and improve. Daniel blinked. A vice presidency. He'd never imagined rising that high, that fast. Why me? Because you've lived both the worst and the best of this company. You understand what breaks people and what sustains them. You have moral authority and practical experience. And Daniel, people trust you. They respect you. That's invaluable. What about the work-life balance, the hours? Still protected. This isn't a return to the old ways. It's a recognition that leadership means caring for people, not just driving results. You'd have autonomy to structure your role in a way that works for you and Mia. Daniel thought about Emma, about how proud she'd be. Thought about Mia, who deserved to see her father succeed without sacrificing his presence in her life. I accept, he said. Isabel's smile was radiant. Excellent. We'll make the announcement next week. But Daniel, there's something else I wanted to discuss, something personal. The air in the room shifted, became charged with the unspoken thing that had been growing between them. The dinner I mentioned, Isabel continued, I meant it, but I want to be honest about my intentions. This past week, watching you fight for your daughter, seeing your strength and dedication, it made me realize something. What's that? That somewhere along the way, my feelings for you became more than professional respect, more than guilt or obligation. I care about you, Daniel, about you and Mia, and I wanted to know if there's any possibility that you might feel the same. Daniel's heart hammered. He'd felt it too, this growing connection, but the power dynamic, the history, the complexity of it all made him cautious. Isabel, 4 months ago you nearly worked me to death. I know. 4 months ago I would have said I hated you. I know that too. But you're not that person anymore, and I'm not that employee anymore. We've both changed. So is that a yes? Daniel smiled despite himself. It's a let's take it slow and see what happens. You're still my boss, there are complications, and Mia has to be my first priority always. I wouldn't want it any other way. Daniel, I don't expect anything. I just wanted to be honest about my feelings. If all we ever have is a strong working relationship and friendship, that's enough. But if there's a chance for more, I'd like to explore it. Carefully, slowly, with full respect for your boundaries and Mia's needs. One dinner, Daniel said. Let's start with one dinner and see how we feel. That sounds perfect. They scheduled dinner for Friday night. Daniel arranged for Mrs. Chen to watch Mia, though he told his daughter he had a work dinner. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. He wasn't ready to explain to a 6-year-old what was happening when he didn't fully understand it himself. The restaurant Isabel chose was quiet and elegant, the kind of place where conversations could happen without interruption. They talked about work initially, safe territory, but gradually the conversation deepened. Isabel told him about her childhood, about growing up as Richard Crown's daughter with all the pressure and privilege that entailed. About her mother, who'd died when Isabel was 12, leaving her to navigate adolescence and grief largely alone while her father built his empire. I think that's why I became so hard after he died, Isabel said. I'd already lost my mother. Losing my father too felt like losing the last person who really knew me. So I put on armor and pretended to be invincible. You don't have to pretend with me. I know. That's what's so terrifying and wonderful about this. You've seen me at my worst, Daniel. You know exactly who I was, what I'm capable of. And somehow you're still here. Because I've also seen you at your best. I've seen you change, grow, take responsibility. That takes more courage than staying the same. They talked about Emma too, because she was part of Daniel's story and always would be. Isabel asked about her, really asked, wanting to understand the woman Daniel had loved. She sounds amazing, Isabel said, and I want you to know I'm not trying to replace her or compete with her memory. If we do this, if we build something together, it'll be its own thing. Different, but hopefully just as meaningful. I appreciate that. As they left the restaurant, Walking through the Manhattan streets toward where Isabel's car was waiting, Daniel felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not just for himself, but for a future that might include partnership again, companionship, maybe even love. "Can I tell you something?" Isabel said, stopping on the sidewalk. "That night you collapsed, when I was kneeling beside you in the elevator and Mia was crying. That was the moment I realized I'd become someone I hated, someone who measured worth by productivity instead of humanity. You gave me that moment of clarity. You saved me as much as I'm trying to make amends to you." "We saved each other then." "Yeah, I think we did." She kissed him goodnight, soft and tentative, a promise of possibility. Daniel drove home with his heart full, walked into his apartment to find Mia and Mrs. Chen watching a movie together, and felt blessed by the beautiful complication his life had become. Over the next 3 months, Daniel and Isabel navigated their evolving relationship with care and intention. They kept it quiet at work initially, not hiding but not advertising either. They went on dates, had long conversations, built a foundation of trust and understanding. And slowly, carefully, Isabel became part of Daniel and Mia's life. The first time Isabel came to the apartment for dinner, Mia was shy. She remembered Isabel from the hospital and Arizona, but this was different. This was her dad having a guest, someone who might become important. "Are you Daddy's girlfriend?" Mia asked with characteristic 6-year-old directness. Isabel glanced at Daniel, who nodded permission to answer honestly. "I'm his friend right now," Isabel said, "but I like your daddy very much, and I like you too. If it's okay with you, I'd like to spend more time with both of you and see if maybe someday I could be his girlfriend." Mia considered this seriously. "Do you know how to braid hair?" "I don't, but I could learn." "Okay, you can come for dinner, but Daddy makes the best grilled cheese, so don't try to change that." "I wouldn't dream of it." They ate grilled cheese and tomato soup. Isabel was awkward at first, unsure how to interact with a child, but Mia's natural warmth and chatter gradually drew her out. By the end of the evening, they were reading stories together on the couch. Mia nestled between Daniel and Isabel, pointing out her favorite pictures. After Mia was in bed, Isabel and Daniel sat on the couch with glasses of wine. "That went well," Daniel said. "She's wonderful. You've done an amazing job with her." "We're doing an amazing job, me and her together. She teaches me as much as I teach her." Isabel reached for his hand. "I know I'm navigating unfamiliar territory here. I've never dated someone with a child before. I'll probably make mistakes." "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we handle them." "Then I promise to handle them with honesty and humility. And to always, always remember that Mia comes first. Not because I'm being selfless, but because anyone who loves you has to love her too. You're a package deal." "We are." "Good. I wouldn't have it any other way." 6 months after Daniel's collapse, Crown Capital held its annual company gala. It was a tradition Richard Crown had started, a celebration of the year's successes and a chance for employees to bring families and partners. In previous years, under Isabel's leadership, it had been a stiff, formal affair. This year, she'd transformed it into something warmer, still elegant, but with space for joy and genuine celebration. Daniel brought Mia as his date, her in a blue dress that matched her eyes, him in a suit she'd helped him pick out. When they arrived, Mia's eyes went wide at the decorations, the orchestra, the ice sculptures. "Daddy, this is like a princess party." "It kind of is." Isabel found them within minutes, stunning in a black gown that took Daniel's breath away. She'd been open about their relationship now, making it clear that she was dating Daniel and that anyone who had a problem with it could take it up with her directly. No one had dared. "Mia, you look beautiful," Isabel said, crouching down to the girl's level. "So do you. You look like a queen." "Thank you, sweetheart. Would you like to meet some of the other employees' kids? We set up a special area with games and activities." Mia looked to Daniel for permission. He nodded, and she skipped off with one of the event coordinators, leaving Daniel and Isabel alone. "You really did transform this event," Daniel said, looking around at the relaxed atmosphere, the families mingling, the genuine laughter. "I wanted to celebrate people, not just profits. Your idea, actually, from that culture development proposal you submitted. You've implemented a lot of my proposals, because they're good. Because you understand what people need to thrive. Daniel, I have something for you. She led him to a quiet corner and pulled out a small box. Inside was a watch, elegant, expensive, engraved on the back. To new beginnings. With gratitude and love. I. Daniel's throat tightened. Isabel, this is too much. It's not nearly enough. But I wanted you to have something to mark this year. Everything we've been through, everything we've built. You changed my life, Daniel Foster, in the best possible way. He kissed her then, in front of half the company, not caring who saw. When they pulled apart, Isabel was smiling through tears. I love you, she said. I know it's soon. I know it's complicated, but I need you to know. I love you. I love you too, Daniel said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The evening continued in a blur of joy. Daniel danced with Mia, who stood on his feet like he'd taught her. He introduced Isabel to his team as his girlfriend, watching them light up with approval and happiness for him. He watched Isabel interact with employees at all levels, remembering names and asking about their lives, being the leader she'd become. At one point, Marcus pulled Daniel aside. Boss, I have to say, when you first started dating the CEO, I was worried. But seeing you two together, seeing how she looks at you and Mia, seeing how happy you are, it gives me hope that good things actually happen to good people sometimes. Later, as the event was winding down, Daniel found Mia asleep in one of the family lounge chairs, her dress rumpled and her hair falling out of its careful style. He picked her up gently, and she stirred. Did I fall asleep? You did, baby. It's okay. Let's go home. Is Isabel coming? Daniel glanced at Isabel, who'd gathered their coats. If she wants to. I want to, Isabel said softly. They rode home in Isabel's car, Mia dozing between them. At the apartment, Isabel helped Daniel tuck Mia into bed, both of them watching as she settled into sleep with her stuffed rabbit. She's so peaceful, Isabel whispered. She is now. It took a long time to get here. They went to the living room, sat on the couch in the dim light. Isabel kicked off her heels, curled her feet under her, leaned against Daniel's shoulder. I've been thinking about the future, she said. Yeah? I want to be part of yours. Officially, permanently. I know it's too soon to talk about marriage or anything like that, but Daniel, I want you to know my intentions. I'm in this for the long haul, you and Mia both. What if I told you it's not too soon? Isabel sat up, looked at him with wide eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying that life is short and unpredictable. I lost Emma without warning. I almost lost my health, my daughter, my future. I've learned that when you find something good, something real, you don't wait for the perfect time. You hold on to it. Daniel Foster, are you proposing to me? Not tonight. Tonight I'm just telling you that I want a future with you. A real, permanent, committed future. And when the time is right, when Mia is ready, when we've built an even stronger foundation, yes, I'm going to propose. Is that something you'd want? Isabel's answer was a kiss, deep and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, she was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes, that's something I'd want, very much. They spent the night talking about dreams and plans and possibilities, about how they'd blend their lives, where they'd live, how they'd navigate the complexities of being partners in work and life, about how they'd honor Emma's memory while building something new, about how they'd raise Mia together, giving her stability and love and the security of knowing she was cherished. I never thought I'd find this again, Daniel admitted as dawn light started creeping through the windows. After Emma died, I thought that chapter of my life was closed, that I'd focus on Mia and work, and that would be enough. And now I know that the heart has infinite capacity. I can love Emma's memory and love you too. I can be Mia's father and your partner. I can have a career and a life. It's not about choosing anymore. It's about balance. Balance, Isabel echoed. I like that. 1 year after his collapse, Daniel stood in front of the Crown Capital leadership team and presented the annual culture report. The numbers were staggering. Employee satisfaction was up 43%. Turnover was down 67%. Productivity had increased despite the reduction in hours. The company had landed its 3 biggest clients in history, all citing culture and values as key factors in their decision. "We've proven something important this year," Daniel told the assembled executives. "We've proven that treating people with dignity and respect isn't just morally right, it's good business. We've proven that excellence and humanity can coexist. We've proven that when you invest in people's well-being, they invest their best selves in the company." The board gave him a standing ovation. Isabel, sitting at the head of the table as CEO, looked at him with such pride and love that Daniel's heart swelled. After the meeting, they walked through the office together. Employees called out greetings, stopped to chat, shared updates about their lives. The atmosphere was completely transformed from the tense, fearful environment of a year ago. "You did this," Isabel said as they rode the elevator to her office. "You took a company that was destroying people and helped make it somewhere people actually want to work. We did this, together." In her office, Isabel closed the door and pulled Daniel into her arms. "I have something for you." She handed him an envelope. Inside was a deed, a co-ownership deed for a brownstone in Brooklyn. "I bought it 6 months ago," Isabel explained. "I was waiting for the right time to tell you. It has 4 bedrooms, a backyard for Mia, a home office for you, and it's in the best school district in Brooklyn. I hoped, maybe we could make it ours, together." Daniel looked at the address, pictured walking up those steps with Mia, building a life with Isabel in actual shared space rather than his small Queens apartment or her sterile penthouse. "Are you sure? This is a huge step." "I've never been more sure of anything. Daniel, I want to build a home with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to help Mia with her homework and have family dinners and fight about whose turn it is to do dishes. I want the mundane, beautiful, complicated reality of a shared life." "Then yes. Absolutely yes." They told Mia that weekend, taking her to see the brownstone. She ran through the rooms, claiming the one with the window seat as hers, exploring the backyard with its old oak tree perfect for climbing. "We're really going to live here, all 3 of us?" "All 3 of us," Daniel confirmed. "And Isabel is going to be like my mom?" The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Daniel and Isabel exchanged glances. They'd talked about this, about how to navigate Mia's relationship with Isabel without erasing Emma's memory. Isabel knelt down to Mia's level. "Your mom will always be your mom, Mia. Emma will always be the person who gave birth to you and loved you first. But I love you too, and I love your daddy. If you want, I can be like a second mom. Someone who's here to take care of you and love you along with your dad. But your first mom's place in your heart stays exactly where it is. Does that make sense?" Mia thought about it seriously. "So I can have 2 moms? One in heaven and one here?" "Exactly." "Okay, that's good. Because I love you, Isabel. You make my daddy happy, and you're teaching me to braid hair, and you always remember my favorite snacks." Isabel pulled Mia into a hug, tears streaming down her face. Daniel joined them, wrapping his arms around both his daughter and the woman he loved, feeling more complete than he'd thought possible. They moved into the brownstone 2 months later. Sharon came to visit for a long weekend, and the meeting that Daniel had dreaded turned out to be healing. Sharon and Isabel found common ground in their love for Mia. Sharon apologized again for the custody incident, and Isabel graciously accepted. They'd never be best friends, but they could be cordial family members united in wanting what was best for Mia. On Mia's 7th birthday, they threw a party in the backyard of their new home. Mia's school friends ran wild through the space, hopped up on cake and ice cream. Daniel's team from Crown Capital came, along with Mrs. Chen and several neighbors and Mia's therapist and teachers. It was chaotic and joyful, and exactly what Emma would have wanted for their daughter. As the party wound down and Mia opened presents with her friends, Daniel and Isabel stood together watching. "You know what's funny?" Daniel said. "A year and a half ago, I thought my life was over. I thought the collapse was the end of everything, but it was actually the beginning. The breaking point that became a turning point." "Exactly. If I hadn't collapsed, you wouldn't have changed. We wouldn't have changed. None of this would exist." "I prefer to think we would have found our way here eventually," Isabel said. "Maybe not through crisis, but through something. Maybe, but I've stopped questioning the path. I'm just grateful we ended up here." Mia ran over, her face flushed with excitement. "Daddy! Isabel, Sophie's mom said we can get a puppy if it's okay with you. Can we, please?" Daniel and Isabel looked at each other, communicating silently the way couples do. A puppy meant more responsibility, more chaos, more complication in their already complex life. Sure, they said simultaneously. Mia shrieked with joy and ran off to tell Sophie. Daniel laughed, pulled Isabel close, kissed her temple. We're getting a puppy. Apparently we are, along with everything else. Everything else was right. Daniel had his vice presidency, his healthy work-life balance, his team that respected him. Isabel had her company thriving under a new ethos of sustainable excellence. They had their brownstone, their blended family, their love that had grown from ashes and accountability. They had Mia, healthy and happy and surrounded by people who cherished her. They had each other. That night, after the guests had gone home and Mia was asleep surrounded by new toys, Daniel and Isabel sat on their back porch under the stars. I have something for you, Daniel said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Isabel's eyes went wide. Is that? It is. Daniel opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Isabel Crown, you changed my life. You broke me down and then helped build me back stronger. You fought for my daughter when she was taken. You've loved us both with patience and devotion and fierce protection. You've become my partner in every sense of the word. Will you marry me? Isabel was crying, nodding before she could speak. Yes. Yes. Absolutely yes. Daniel slipped the ring on her finger, pulled her into his arms, held her as they both cried happy tears under the Brooklyn sky. Inside, Mia slept peacefully, dreaming of puppies and birthday parties, and the security of knowing she was loved beyond measure. Somewhere, in whatever place exists beyond this one, Emma Foster smiled at the family her husband had built, at the love he'd found, at the life their daughter was living. And in that Brooklyn brownstone, as Daniel and Isabel held each other and planned their future, 3 words echoed through the night, simple and true and powerful. They were home. The billionaire who'd overworked the single dad had learned what truly mattered. The father who'd nearly lost everything had found abundance beyond measure. And the little girl who'd lost her mother had gained a family that would never let her go. It wasn't the ending any of them had expected, but it was, in every way that mattered, exactly the ending they all deserved. A different kind of future, built on broken pieces, reassembled into something stronger, more beautiful, more real than what had come before. And that, Daniel thought, as he held the woman he loved under the stars, was the greatest gift of all. Not perfection, but transformation. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of healing. Not a life without struggle, but a life where struggle led to growth, and growth led to grace. They'd made it. Against all odds, through crisis and fear and impossible challenges, they'd made it to the other side. Together.